Good morning. Thank you for coming. This is the first meeting of the new academic year. Let's just do introductions, and then after that, let's start with the election of the chair and co-chair. The chair, preferably, we would want somebody that is an existing member, and the co-chair would be somebody from the that is a new member. So let's begin. Yes.
Hi, I'm Megan Wheeler from Angelo State University.
I'm Tim Brace. I'm the liaison between the coordinating board and ApplyTexas.
I'm Cassandra La Chica from UT El Paso.
Good morning, Jeff Fuller from the University of Houston.
Ethan Logan from Texas Tech University.
Mary Gooch, Prairie View A&M University.
Linda Kluke, Austin Community College.
Vic Rajput, Tarrant County College.
Albert Salinas, Laredo Community College.
Alicia Roberts, I'm representing Brownsville Independent School District. Pilar Janis is usually here.
Jeremy Martinez, Midland College.
Cheryl Moon, A&M Galveston.
Trey Hadaway, Kilgore College.
Matt Hibbard, South Texas College.
Daryl Hendry, El Paso Community College.
Michael Heinze, Texas State University.
Actually, can we get the ladies in the back?
Jeannie Rickey, Texas Women's University.
Natalie Coffey, Coordinating Board.
There's actually an empty spot up here, especially for our committee member. If you want to move up closer so you can get to the mic. Jeremy Thomas, Angelina College.
Andrew Lofters, Coordinating Board.
And Jose Rios, Coordinating Board. Well, let's open up the floor for nominations for chair.
Jose, I would like to recommend Ethan Logan for the chair position.
Anybody else? Okay, so Ethan, do you accept the nomination?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Jeff.
Turn of the favor.
Nominations for co-chair.
I would like to nominate Jeremy Thomas. You are. Withdraw that nomination.
I'm an old committee member.
Jose, can we first find out who the new members are?
Yes. It would be, I think I sent that to y'all. Hold on. It's taking a while. Could you see that? Yep. Okay, it's Albert Salinas from Laredo Community College. Ethan Logan, he got reelected or reappointed. Michael from Texas State University. Jeannie Rickey from Texas Women's University. Monique Kosich from Stephen F. Austin. Megan Wheeler from Angelo State University. Robert Jenkins from the University of Texas Health Science Center at Houston. Linda Kluck from Austin Community College. Andrea Leiner from Tyler Junior College. Trey Hathaway from Kilgore College. That's it.
Any of the new people want to volunteer?
I'll volunteer.
Cool. Nominate him.
Anybody else? So Alberto Salinas from Laredo Community College is the co-chair. Now, approval of the last minutes of the last meeting. We did get a couple of edits from Cheryl and from Tim. Any other edits? Okay, Ethan, from here on.
Yes, sir. I'll be happy to.
Okay.
I'd entertain a motion to accept the minutes from the last meeting, February 12th, 2012.
So moved.
So moved and second. Any other discussion? All right, thank you very much. You'll have to excuse me because I don't know if we have any pending old business.
I have one.
Jose.
The scholarship, there was a concern that was submitted to the coordinating board about the merit-based scholarship, and I put the information out there. You have it as a handout. This person is a former board member, and she's concerned about having the income questions required on the scholarship application, even though some of the students might not want to qualify for need-based scholarships. They just want to apply for merit-based scholarships. So is that her suggestion was to add a statement or something for a student to let them know that if they're going just for merit-based scholarships, they don't have to answer those questions. Those are optional. Any discussion? I know that we discussed this a while back, but we didn't really look at that issue at that point.
Jose, would there be an option for institutions to choose if they want to make those questions required or not? Because some institutions may have scholarships. I know if your institution is a recipient of the Terry Foundation, it's both need and merit-based. And so if you're using that application on ApplyTexas for that, you need to capture that information. So I'm wondering if it could at least be left up to the institution if they want to make those questions required or not.
Well, I mean, yeah, I think we do need to put some type of statement that gives an option. But I mean, if it's right now, the way that it's written is those questions are required. It doesn't matter if, it doesn't matter if they're just going for merit-based scholarships. Or this would, her suggestion, well, the way that I've heard it is that this would discourage students to even apply because they don't want to give that information. Either the students don't want to give that information or the parents don't want to give out that information because they know they don't qualify. So you wouldn't even have the students' application at all. So, I mean, I'm fine with it as long as we put some type of disclaimer or statement on the application itself. How does other institutions feel about it? Texas State.
I echo Jeff's concern there. The Terry Scholars are both need and merit-based scholarship programs, so we want to make sure that we don't do things unintentionally that put those students in a situation where they might not be considered. I mean, the Terrys are very specific about that, And that would be my concern.
But if Terry is if Terry is both, then that student would only be qualified for the merit side, right?
They must provide both types of
Both
information
types?
before the Terrys will
Okay.
even consider them. They'll be left out of the consideration if the income if they can't demonstrate need, then they're not even going to bank the cut for consideration. So that's the problem.
And that was just one example. I know there could be institution-specific scholarships, donor-related scholarships that may have ties that state that they are given to specific students in academic programs, but there's got to be a need performance. And if the student hasn't done a FAFSA for a variety of reasons, this may be the only way the institution can collect the data. So it's just a thought, changing them from required for all now and leave it, I think, to the institution at least would allow institutions that don't have this as an issue to not have to worry about it, but the ones that might be able to know that they could do that. Because the only thing is I'm fearful of is if they're made not required, then an institution could easily go in and just create dynamic questions that are auditative required questions, and we're really back to what could be a problem. So, at least if left up to the institution, they could determine if it's needed or not.
And I guess if the student understands, or if the student had that information, they might be willing to, even if it's optional or whatever, they might be willing to do the extra step and ask for the income. But right now, there's really not that information expressed in the application. So if we can just write up something and still make it required or optional or whatever, as long as the student knows why the institution decided to do it that way, I think we would be okay with that.
Yeah, Jeff, that seems reasonable. Because then you could define it. Why are we asking for this? We're doing that because some scholarships require both, and that's reasonable. Now, will they read it? That's a whole other matter. But
I think the parents would be the ones that are reading this.
Well, but like with us, we do 46 ApplyTexas meetings throughout the year, and there's not a single parent with them when we do it. And I bet if we went around the room, I bet we're going to find that same thing. Not very often are parents sitting next to the student when they fill out their application for us. That's a rarity, because most of those are done during the day.
Yeah. I think FAFSA is a little different story, because I think with FAFSA, because they've got to, especially with the changes, they now have to produce accurate and then the tax transcript and everything else. But with the application, since it's open much earlier than everything, parents just may not be as engaged with the student at this point. Mm-hmm. But I think if it was there, at least it would, again, leave it to the institution and put it at that local level to make that decision.
I guess for next meeting, let's just come up with an agenda item so that we can discuss this, and then come up with a statement that we want to add to that section of the application, and work on that. That's all.
Thank you, Jose.
Ethan, can I bring up one thing while we're still in old business?
Yes,
This is
sir.
more of a discussion, not something I want to vote on. And Jose, this is something you and I emailed back and forth with. We had a change from the request. This is one example of to change the veterans question, which we spent like 3 meetings in here last year for. And ultimately, it was changed by the coordinating board, or one of the staff members, McGregor, did it. Mm-hmm. And the committee found out after we had made the mistake in the summer meeting of saying it was the other way, and then we find out, oh, no, it's not that way. And I would just like to put in the request that when things like that need to be changed, especially when we have voted on them, that we're at least part of that process. And the reason I say that, because I have a concern, and it's an ultimate concern of if we don't, then institutions such as community colleges, which don't have to use ApplyTexas as an exclusive model as the only entry point. They can use their own apps also.
Yeah, not yet, but yeah.
I don't want them to run back the other direction because they feel like their voice is not being part of the pool that's going in. And so I just a concern that I want to make sure that we're communicating that back and forth. Legal reasons, it's fine. I mean, we've had those come up before. But the committee needs to be aware, one, so we don't look like idiots when we're standing in front of everybody preaching one thing and it's actually something else. So that was my only thing.
Thank you, Jeremy. I'd like to move on to agenda item number 5, report on technical updates from Dr. Brace. Tim?
Let's see. Had some things just to bring you all up to date on. And also, part of this is also to kind of throw out there if people want to give feedback on certain issues of how we do things, and we're always open to discussions and individual suggestions and subcommittees and what to help us make our processes better. So we are, with regard to our help desk and our help process, making some changes. We're trying to beef up write some more guides. Just a lot of that's just based on feedback. About the password reset part of the help desk and have a different group back, because about 3/4 of our email from the applicants are just password resets. We have an online password reset process that works, but am I on? No, sorry. We do have an online process that works, but if you don't remember what questions you asked and the answers to those questions and whatever, then you're dead in the water, and you've got to email. We've got a process that gives you a new password or allows you to set up a new password. So that's about 3/4 of our email to the help desk, which might be several hundred a month, just that. So we split that out and have another group of people handling that, so that should lighten the load on the help desk just specifically with regard to password resets. But again, we're open to ideas about any part of the suite, whether it's the application or the admin suite or the counselor suite. If you find certain things difficult to understand, then email the help desk and make a suggestion, or just say that I'm having trouble with this, and we try to monitor that not only in specific requests but also just see how many emails came in about this issue. How can we address it proactively on our end to make it maybe more easy to understand. So that's just about the help process. On the administrative suite, it's kind of the same thing. We have the way that we do our processes. There's a certain way that migrations happen, and we're always open to suggestions or questions about how that works. Sometimes it's just a matter of it can be a very flexible process, and sometimes it's just a matter of new people coming in or new administrators coming in not quite knowing exactly what to do. So again, we're trying to beef up our guide. Here's how you do this, step 1, step 2, step 3. I think we can beef up that, and we're in the process of that. And again, there's always questions about migrations, and the migrations of the scholarship app for those who use it versus the migrations of the app, and should they be together, should they be separate, and we just want to make that clear so that everybody understands it. And if we have a way that we can do it better that everyone would agree to and like, then we're open to those suggestions as well. With regard to and also, we find bugs occasionally, and we'll always, just fix them as we find them, and let y'all know. We'll certainly let the committee know, or certainly let Jose know if we just found something that we discover that's just wrong. We know it should be a different way. We just fix it. On the transmission of data, we'll get into this maybe a little bit. I don't know whether how big issues are with transmission, receipt of transmission, and then movement of ApplyTexas files into your your ERPs into your SISs. If that is an issue, maybe we should talk about it, or maybe have a subcommittee dealing with that. I remember at the conference, sometimes that can be a concern for how we deliver things, how they're received, how they're moved, and we're open to any kind of discussion about how that could be done better. We provide a software product called Q&E that maybe about 25 we have over 120 schools that we serve, and there's a little over 20, maybe 25, maybe almost 30 that use that in one way or another. Is that working? Is there a better way to do that? That's always something we're open to. How do you get your EDI into your ERPs? Is there some way we could do that better? I'll mention, I think I'll take the opportunity here to mention, since we're talking transmission of data, that last year I put some stats together, and last year, I used calendar year because we're done with fall 2012 as far as apps are in, pretty much. So I went fall 2012, summer 2012, and spring 2012 apps, and we had a total of 1,186,331 submitted apps through ApplyTexas for that calendar year. This fall, we had a little over 880,000 for fall 2012. We had 816,000 for fall 2011, so that's an increase of 7.7%. And 2010 fall, we had 726,000, so we had an increase over the 2-year period of 21% just for the fall. I didn't look at the spring and summer. I would assume that maybe similar, but we're seeing that kind of growth of between 5 and 10, and sometimes I would say probably going forward 5 and 10% a year in terms of the number of apps submitted. And then we have another 20% or so apps that are saved and never submitted, but this is just the submitted figures. We added St. Ed's recently to our service community. I believe that's the only one that I know of since we last met that has been added. We've had some others ping us, and we're in the process of dealing with them. But that's the one I know that is online now and open. And also, based on last year's budget, then we basically provided the apps at a cost of 50.5 cents per app. So that's over the last calendar year. So that's for the transmission. The last thing that on here is address cleaning. I think it's maybe going to be a committee issue, but I think it's kind of become a coordinating board issue for us, for an initiative as well. We are doing some significant research, and I've already done significant research on address cleaning, and it'll be up to you and the coordinating board as to whether that's a high priority for this year. But we use something at UT Austin that we might be able to leverage that for fairly inexpensively, and then there are also other vendor products out there that vary considerably in cost. But we believe that if we're handed this as a project, it's not a trivial one, especially, and we would need the help of the committee in terms of implementation. There are a lot of questions of where does this come up, and what happens when there's a correction, and do they have an override capability, and these kinds of things. And we've already started that discussion with our friends from A&M recently, and so we would want direction whether to move forward on this, and whether y'all want to make it a high priority for the year, and then some help in the details of it. Maybe there'll be either someone taking the lead and working with us, or a subcommittee of you all that would do that.
Tim, I have a question on that, sir, just for the benefit of the new folks. Would that be, and it's been a while since we talked about this, would that be something at the point of app submission, or on the back end before it is transmitted to the institution?
The address cleaning? Mm-hmm. We were, in our thoughts about it, we probably would figure that it would be at the creation of the profile, mm-hmm. that when they save the profile, we would go ahead, because the profile is reused, that we would go ahead and do whatever interaction we're going to do with the student at that point. And then it would just be propagated then through each app and through the EDI. We would make an assumption, again, it could be part of discussion, that once they've done it on the profile, they would want that same correction made on each app. They wouldn't have the option to go, well, I want it cleaned on this app, but not cleaned on that app. But it would then be cleaned on every app, unless we give them the option to say no, and pass through the EDI. Does that answer your question? It does. Yeah. Okay, I'm done. Any questions on that, on that technical update?
Part on the cleanup. So right now, when it's imported for us through our system, I mean, even if it was cleaned up, if there were multiple apps and they were already a student or an applicant with us, we have a process where we have to merge that information. So what's the cleanup actually doing for us on the import?
Well, the cleanup is basically pinging, is using a set of software that pings the national database, and so this would be basically the Postal Service, and so it would bring it, if the student agreed to the change, it would bring it in line. So if you lived on something Cove, it would change it maybe to CV or Lane to LN or whatever the standard is. Okay. And then it would also send you county information, which I think could be useful.
Absolutely.
To a lot of people, and I understand that people sometimes miss Houston. Yeah, we have heard some, but that, and that's at least again, it's up to the committee as to how we do this. But we've understood to this point that would be a necessary part of the service, or a really good part to include.
A number of the schools we use Clean Address. Is that the product you're talking about, or there's another one?
You mean that's the name of the product?
Yeah,
the one we're looking at is called Finalist.
Okay,
they basically kind of all plug into the same database. I think
the Clean Address does that. We're a banner school. A lot of schools do that. So it does clean up, goes to the USPS database.
Yeah.
Standardized formats.
That's what this is. Something that the development office at UT Austin already uses, and so I think we can plug into that fairly easily and inexpensively.
Well, and it's great you bring up county, because for all of us community colleges, we have to have county, because that's how we charge tuition.
Any other questions for Tim?
I have one question. Phone numbers. I know that we haven't talked about that too much in the past, but no, I don't want to add more. Our concern is that we're getting into this thing that we call the Tejano alert. Our school is Tejanos. Emergency texting, like active shooter on campus, things like that. So when we started to activate that system, we found out that we have a lot of bad phone numbers in the system, and I'm not talking just students failing to update a phone number that's been disconnected, but in our system we don't have it restricted about putting the dashes in or anything like that, and so I can't remember off the top of my head as I'm thinking about this now. On the ApplyTexas, do they enter the dashes, or is it just numeric entry, or and I think in the field for the phone number that we've had a couple of meetings ago, we decided to extend that number for international numbers. Did we put any restrictions in there? Could you refresh my memory about not allowing dashes or requiring dashes, or how do we do that? Because I'm
phone number on the app asks you not to put in dashes, and I think as far as we'd have to take a look at the foreign ones. We had, I believe that it's just kind of a field. I don't think.
Yeah, I think last year we may have added some characters to the international because we just were limited with the ones that we had. But I do remember we had a conversation about limiting what type of characters you could put in to the foreign. But I don't know if we had that same conversation on the domestic one. And a lot of it, of course, depends on which app they fill out.
Would it be better, rather than having to deal with the dashes or anything like that, to break it down into its components, where there's separate fields, the area code's one field, the first three digits is another, and the last four. That way, there are no dashes, there are no asterisks. It's just the.
I think that would work on the domestic. The international wouldn't, because there's. You've got so many different characters, but I think the domestic, which is what most of us get, would probably you look at most times when you're entering a phone, it's usually the area code, the prefix, the suffix, whatever, and that's what you enter in. Yeah.
I don't know whether there's been a history to this. Some of you have been around longer than I have as to whether this has gone back and forth on how to ask for it. And right now it's just a flat field, and it just says enter numbers, no parentheses, no dashes.
Unlike the residency questions, we really haven't talked a lot about this, which is a good thing. So I think, this sounds like a good
start.
Let's not.
It's time.
So I think this could be, it seems like a pretty
For the
simple.
next meeting, maybe? Would it be possible to put it on the agenda as an item to look at for the next meeting, then to see what the cost would be to do that, or the time for setting a priority to have that done?
Sure, we'd need to know. Yeah, we can discuss it. It doesn't seem a big deal if to just break up a field behind the scenes into several parts, especially with the U.S. On foreign, you probably should stay away from that because we wouldn't know how to break it up for everybody. But on the U.S., we'd want to know how you want to break it up. But it sounds like it would not be difficult to do.
Well, I think ultimately we'll get cleaner data. I mean, it's just, I know like when we do forms and we do socials, we quit putting just a blank field for socials. We went in and we break it up into those, those little fields, or, student IDs, the same thing, or, whatever.
Thank you.
Thank you, Daryle. Any other questions?
I do.
For Tim. Cheryl.
Along those lines, we brought this up the other day. I wanted to see if anyone had some thought about this. There's been some new Social Security number things brought up, so we wondered if ApplyTexas could help us with an audit of Social Security numbers, whether they're put in wrong or right, no zeros in the middle, not starting with 666 or no 666s, etc. So,
I think we discussed it last year or whatever, and then we did implement something already.
Yeah, we got contacted. It's not really an audit of whether a Social Security number is correctly attached to that person, but we did. I think we got contacted by people, some IT people from Texas State, and they helped us with some audits that they had that just kind of said you should never have 666 in any section. There are certain public SSNs that somebody put on an advertisement in the 70s because they thought it would be cool to show their SSN on TV, and now there's like 40,000 people that have used that. And so, but they're very minimal. They're certainly not verification audits. They're just definitely it won't do this,
Okay, so that's already implemented?
That's already implemented, yes.
Is there any other type of matching that can be done on the front end, even though we don't require it?
Yeah, at this point, all we know about is, all we're doing is saying, we know that this is a validly formed, and I think that part of the recently we got something saying they were going to include an 8 now, and they hadn't done that before. I don't know whether we have an audit that says if it starts with an 8, it's not valid. If obviously we'll have to change that. Other than that, there are only just a few instances, and I don't think you can have one that starts with 0 or is all ones or something like that. I don't know that. Although if they're going to do completely random, I guess all ones possibly could be, unless there's some sort of
starts with 0.
rule that they're what?
Connecticut starts with 0.
I think there are none that are like 3 zeros in a row or something. There are some rules which are always subject to change, and we can always kind of find out what they are, but they don't help a lot, and if someone typos, they're backwards, that's not going to catch that unless it happens to throw it into one of those audits.
Anybody have an opinion on whether you want that to go farther?
Social Security Agency can't even do anything about it. Why should we try?
Okay, all righty then.
Yeah, we clean them up through the financial aid.
Okay, yeah.
That's the best way of cleaning.
Cheryl, I do like at least looking at the 8s, because I know our system was rejecting them because it said those are not valid Social Security numbers, and we've had to really work with our provider to go in and rewrite some parts of our software so that it doesn't say those are fake. And that's been our biggest one so far, has been the 8s. So if we could just check to see if the routine's there, that's not.
Yeah, and I think now 8s will be valid, so going forward. So unfortunately for us, 'cause we have some internal numbers that we always thought, just start with 8, assign them with 8. That's not an SSN.
Cheryl, just as an aside, what UTEP and EPCC just did, we changed from 9-digit ID numbers to 8-digit ID numbers, so that we wouldn't have that problem. Not Social Security numbers, but student ID numbers, because both the student ID and the Social Security number used to both be 9-digit. So now we've we've shortened the student ID number to 8 digits so that they don't conflict anymore.
Thank you.
And we can certainly keep up with, I'll mark down that we need to keep up with whatever national standards are with regard to that. If there are any, as those change and they say that certain things are not cannot be parts of SSNs, we'll install audits on that.
And Tim, when y'all do those, if you get those changes, when you do the next year's update sheet, can y'all include those in the update sheet? Because sometimes we don't know until someone starts griping that, hey, my app's not coming through and I entered it correctly, or, you know, whatever.
And let me ask that question. If they put in a number that your audit catches as an inaccurate number, does it tell them right then and there when they're filling it out, or is it at the point of submission, or is it just that they don't come
It's
through?
probably right. It should be right then. I'd have to double check on that.
So
but
it probably won't let them move to the next page unless they maybe empty it out? Okay.
Right. And it's not required.
Right, so they would just empty it out to move on to the next page?
They might, they might just say, well, you know, don't put it in there.
Okay.
Whatever. And I think we do want the SSN if they're willing to give it to us, but it's not required.
Other questions about the entry point for Social Security and audit of Social Security numbers? Okay, Cheryl, you had another item?
One more, and that was for a possible audit for date of birth, so they're not writing 1901, or although somebody might have been born in 1901.
Or today's date.
Or today's date, something.
Sure, we could. That's fairly trivial. We'd want to know from somebody what are the limits. You know, if at what point.
Cheryl, would that be better to have them enter it twice, so it verify on itself, just so we know that they've entered the correct birth date?
It might be. I really hadn't thought of that. We were just thinking of invalid dates, but I hadn't thought about that. Entering it twice would call attention to it.
Well, what's the percentage of that? I mean, is it a small number?
Significant enough for my analyst to have to go back and change. Let's put it that way. I don't know what other people are seeing.
Are they just? Is it? I think it's a field, right? It's not a pull down for the. You're talking about the year.
It's a field. It's not a pull down. Yeah. Pull down might even.
A pull down is an alternative. It's a pretty big pull down if you're going to include, 50, 60, however many years. I don't know how many years you want to put in it. To going to college or more. It's a pretty big pull down, but that would be one. Although they could still choose their own pull down, but be less likely that they would choose 1901 if it was really 1950, or 1960. They might choose 1959 by mistake.
I don't know, that the idea of having them listed twice sounds like a good option. I hadn't thought about that at all.
As an audit, we just say those two don't match.
Yeah, it's just a matter of whether, kind of Jose's point is, I think that, if 99.5% of people do it right, you're making everyone fill in another field,
Unnecessary.
On a fairly large form, Unlike, you do have to do that a lot on the web for like email addresses and stuff, but usually you're filling out a fairly small number of fields, like 2 or 3, and you just have to retype your email or something, or retype your password when you're setting it up. But this is a fairly long form already. It's an idea, and I don't think either way, either one of those is not horribly difficult for us. It's just a matter of y'all would need to decide which way you wanted to go on it. And I would suggest you just
why don't we just
continue to talk about it.
Throw some feedback around online even. I don't have any stats. I just know I've heard the gripe.
Okay, I have a couple of stats on that, Cheryl. I had a staff member make that very same complaint to me very recently. And so, and it went something like this: I got all these and I have to go and check on the birth dates. So when I looked into it, he's had 2 like in 3 years. And it's just so...
they're a real pain when you run into them, I guess.
Yeah,
we could certainly put in certain limits. I mean, you would assume at a certain point you can say, if it's this year, that's a problem. If it's last year, that's probably still a problem. I don't know at what point you would say, you want to discriminate against 7-year-olds going to college if they're eligible, or 110-year-olds.
Or even, and this might be a really stupid idea, but instead of having them enter it a second time, if there was just some kind of little flag, like maybe it calculated their age and just displayed it right there for them, and your eye will go there and it'll look at that. And so if it says age as of today,
that
something like that.
That seems reasonable. And then
It's
they
like
could
a
go,
very
wait a minute,
easy
no, I'm
calculation.
13, not 63,
Right.
or 23, not 63.
Exactly.
Well, and the concern I have about trying to put in like an ending date, if you will. I have 70-year-olds
Yes.
in classes, so where do you draw that line? I mean,
almost, If you draw it at a point where you're pretty much guaranteed that no one would hit it, then your audit isn't really of any use.
Right.
So.
I think that sounds like a very good solution, Megan. I think
That's a great idea.
This was becoming a very challenging question with the rules that we were going to have to try to put in place, and I think that solves that very quickly. Any other questions for Tim?
We would just need to know what would happen at that point, once that popped up and it was wrong.
Well, I guess, we'd have to, the best solution probably would be if we could populate it right away, as soon as they enter it, pop up a little thing on the side, and that way before they submit it, and then they could change that one, because it wouldn't be an error if they were 73, right? We would just, we would want them maybe we could see if we could do it upon filling that field before and then if that was wrong, they could change it before they save that page. We can look into that. I do have one thing that's just, this was under the kind of idea of transmission of data, and this is just an FYI. There's going to be, UT Austin is in conversation with the National Student Clearinghouse about managing the Speedy server, and so I just didn't want y'all to be caught unawares of an announcement that will be forthcoming with some details about that. And we, at UT Austin, they generally consider this to be a good thing. After the announcement is made and UT Austin moves into the period of starting that process, I'll be happy to give you all updates as we go forward on the next meeting.
When is the time frame for this? Are they looking at?
The announcement will be made at an ACRO meeting next week, and I think there's basically a year that's being set aside to, I suppose that then whatever agreement is, I think could still be changed between now and next week. But I think they're looking at a year of kind of feasibility, what would it really involve and stuff. So probably a year or so, probably a cycle, maybe. But they have, they understand our use of it, and that's really important, so.
Have we gotten to one of these attachments yet for requests for new functionality, or is that somewhere?
Actually, I think we're at subcommittee update.
Yeah.
Where
no,
it's down here.
Yeah.
It's down here.
We're coming up to it.
Just thought I'd try.
Thank you, Tim. Our next agenda item is subcommittee updates. We have 4 subcommittees that are listed, and if there's other subcommittees that need to make a report, then we will also entertain that. And I'm not sure if I know who the chairs are for these committees, so I'm just going to go ahead and open it up to the high school counselor suite and ask that committee make a report or decline.
We have not met. We have some new folks who we have some folks who are no longer part of the group. So I would welcome any folks who would like to be involved in that, specifically if your institution does some things with working with your regional and your local educational service centers to try and see how they're using or encouraging usage of the counselor suite for the different areas there. Hopefully folks know what that is, but a lot of high schools are using this as ways to track their applicants as well as identifying who from their schools have applied to which schools. Does not give admission status, but it does let them know at least who's applied and if they submitted application or not there. So if there are individuals who would be interested in being part of that discussion, I would welcome them to our subcommittee.
There is one change that we did. Well, it's on the FAFSA, but we did finish the financial aid information that is going to be integrated into the ApplyTexas counselor suite. I'm in the process of writing the memo to all the counselors in Texas announcing this new feature. The new feature is basically going to give them access to their students' FAFSA application status and whether the student was selected for verification, so that the counselor can have enough time to do some kind of intervention with the student when they're still in school. Right now we have, well, Tim is going to make it live this week or whenever he gets back. We are going to provide the counselors last year seniors for a couple of months. Then after that, whenever the new financial aid cycle opens, we will be updating that information every 2 weeks. That's the plan right now, where counselors can go in and pull. They don't have to do anything. They just have to pull down their report every 2 weeks and see who has filled their application. The other thing, the data that we're providing them is basically the first name, last name, date of birth, date of submission, date of completion, and then whether they were verified or not, whether they were selected to verification or not. So if a student has submitted an application or if a student has started an application, they will also get that information of not complete, so that they can go back and talk to their students to help them out with the financial aid form and encourage them to finish and apply.
Is there any issue that we're going to have with a student who says, well, I didn't want my teacher or my counselor to know that information?
No, it's we vetted through the whole FERPA issue and everything. Right now, there's a federal pilot program that is.
Well, I was thinking of those who have already graduated, actually, is what I was thinking of, not the ones who are still in school.
No, they're still part of the. Our lawyers didn't think that was an issue, and we vetted to the UT lawyers too. I mean, we've had tons and tons of discussions.
I understand the younger ones because they have an interest in them, but post-graduation, you don't always.
The whole purpose of giving them the information also is for them to get a baseline and increase their FAFSA submission numbers.
I like the idea.
So,
I was curious.
And then the federal pilot, again, it's a high school or an ISD can actually get back data from them, so it's not violating anything.
Say, would it be possible at maybe one of our next meetings for us to see that, even if it's in a test environment?
I haven't seen it yet.
Yeah, because I think that would be great for us in preparation for having the conversations with our institutions, and just, because what we're finding is a lot of us around the room here are working with high schools to get and increase the usage of the counselor suite. So this could be a part of the discussions we have with them. That would be great.
I think this feature will increase tremendously the usage of the counselor suite because, again, every counselor has, if they want to keep up with their caseload or with their students, they have to log in every week or every 2 weeks to get a fresh report. And then, again, we're going to be trying to advertise this new feature in different conferences and everything like that. So
I was just mentioning that I know you mentioned counselors, and there's various ways to do that. But I do think because this is a huge part of the ability for students to be able to matriculate at institutions, I would encourage that this also be shared through superintendents and principals as well, because this may be what is the conduit to actually increase the usage of the counselor suite.
And I think right now we actually have access, and Tim, correct me if I'm wrong, we actually have access on the counselor suite, different levels. So like we can give district level data So anybody that is associated with the ISC can access or can get access. It's not just counselors. It's just the name of it.
Sure, it's just I know a lot of our schools are really focused on not just what institutions their kids are going to, but how much dollars they're getting, and they do include financial aid dollars in that as well with the scholarship awards. And so this is a huge sort of carrot that superintendents and principals may really help at showing their board that their students are actually being successful in that process.
Right now, we just have the council, the school information, but more than likely later on, we will probably add district level aggregate reports, because a superintendent or district level people don't want to see, don't want to calculate their numbers. So we're probably going to be doing the district level reports.
I would say that's a great initiative. I agree. And there's a number of our schools are involved with Texas Complete, so that is going to be a great part of that. A couple of years ago, we had talked about negotiating with Department of Ed about pre-populating the FAFSA when they fill out the app. Is that possible too? Or
That's still a huge initiative that we're working on. I think. Well, I mean, the discussion has been had for a couple of years now, for 4 or 5 years. But now that the FAFSA, now that the feds are willing to work with other agencies or entities, I think that this would be a good opportunity to start that discussion at the federal level.
Great. Excellent.
Yeah, I do have. We're probably going to do some type of discussions with at the Fed level with our contact to see how far we can, and then if we can't do it, then we can just stop talking about it.
Okay, great, excellent, thank you.
What's the anticipated go live for this feature?
But the feature is going to be live next week. The memo is going to go out next week too. The last year's data is going to be stopped at probably like in the middle of January. The new cycle starts in January, but every cycle we get all the data. The coordinating board gets all the data from the feds. So every year, every cycle, we have to tweak the database because of either changes on data fields or new fields added and everything like that. So that takes a couple of months because they have to look at every data field
sometimes
to make
after
sure
the first
that
of the year.
So whenever we download the data, that the data is going to be readable. So the goal is to have the new cycle up and running in February 1st, because I think as a state, February and is the start of financial aid month. So we're trying to get that in February. Now, we're going to try to push to see if we can get the data weekly, at least for a couple of months. But right now we have, the agency has committed to at least bi-weekly. So it's not really, the project was called real-time data or FAFSA, real-time FAFSA data. It's not real-time. It's not. Even the federal pilot is not live either. So we're not trying, or we're going to stop calling it that because it's not real life or live data. But again, the information that we're giving them, the high schools can actually analyze the data. If they have a FAFSA event that date or a specific day, even though they get the data 2 or 3 weeks after that, they still have the submission date in that data so that they can actually analyze and evaluate the effectiveness of their financial aid events. So it's a really good, I mean, this project has been, we've been in the works for a long time. So, and then we did a pilot with Austin, with the Austin area schools. It could not be implemented statewide just the way that we did it. It was too administrative burden. It was just too much for counselors to do it the way that the pilot was structured. So whenever I heard about it, ApplyTexas just came into mind. I mean, it was a simple match, and then it's a good project.
Jose, you mentioned that it'll go live and it'll be publicized. Who is this publicized to?
Counselors. We're going to be doing. We're going to target the counselors first.
Okay.
After we start writing district level data, it's probably going to be publicized to superintendents and principals.
Okay. And just a quick back and forth, I can tell you that there's one counseling office in East Texas that has no idea that a high school counselor suite exists. So when was this publicized? How has it been publicized? And when did this go live? Because I'm same thing, never heard about it at our level either.
The counselor suite has been publicized in the annual FAFSA posters and applications that we send out to high schools. Well, before we did the applications, now we stopped the applications, but the counselor suite has always been publicized in that memo. Whenever every high school gets those materials for ApplyTexas. This year it was the same, and then I mentioned that was going to be a new feature that we were working on, and then we're going to do a follow-up memo to the same people, and it's not to a specific person. The memo goes to the college readiness counselor. So we don't have a specific contact at the high school level. We were trying to get counselor emails, but and we were working with TEA to see if that was possible, if we could get if PEMS had that information, but they don't. It doesn't go to that level. It goes to they have the principal's contact information. They have other officials, but not the counselor. So whenever, I'm sorry, the TA representative, there was a TA representative. She moved on. She was hired somewhere else. So, she left TEA. So once we have a TA representative, we'll have those discussions with TEA and see if we can see if there's any other mechanism we can get better communications with counselors.
Jose,
Right now, that's the only communications that we have, because we don't really deal with or have that much communications with secondary ed.
I know that ESCs do have databases of the emails for counselors, because we've actually used them. So I think sending it to the education service centers and have them, because that really is who is the technical person in the regions to help counselors use the counselors portal, the suite, if you will. So there's a technical person, and there's usually a functional counselor at a school who also helps schools get on board with the counselor suite. So I would definitely cast a very wide net with that, because I'm afraid that schools will hear about this when it's too late, and it won't necessarily. It'll be the institutions who have the great structure in place already to help their students, but the ones who need it the most may not necessarily know about it until the very end.
Was part of your question dealing with community college or colleges in general finding out about this also?
Right, I've never heard about it either.
Well, two things that we've done from this committee is that we've discussed it at TACRO at our update session over the last couple of years, and we've also discussed it at our conference. But have we sent it? We've sent that on listserv too, haven't we?
It has. It's also been shared with TACAC, the high school counselor group. The challenge, though, is there are many high school counselors who aren't active or part of any of those organizations. And so that's why, many of them, their local training, if they get it, is going to be at the school level, the district level, or at the ESC level.
Well, maybe it's worth, since we've obviously got someone in the room that had never heard of it, that we bring it up again, either on the listserv or at our update we do at TACRO in a couple of weeks, to just make sure that all of our schools are aware it's out there, and we should be communicating with our.
Are we talking about the counselor suite in general? We're not.
Yeah, or you're talking about in general.
You didn't know about the counselor suite. Gosh, we goofed somewhere on there.
They don't let me attend sessions at TACRO.
We'll talk to your leadership.
We have a counselor that's been trying to speak.
I was going to mention, and Jeff said it, that our service center is the one that first brought it up, and as a matter of fact, they renew the password if it's been idle for a while, and they renew it periodically. And also, I was going to ask while we were saying that is that we have an Advise Texas representative, specifically from Texas A&M at our campus, who helps the kids with financial aid and application processing, and she has access to to a limited counselor suite. We were just talking about that, and she can only view the kids' names and not the total numbers like the counselors has, and she she views it frequently, and it's worked really well, especially with some other kids from AmeriCorps who also are there. And I was going to ask about the viewing of the FAFSA information, is because for the top 10 thing, they have to have it by a certain date, their FAFSA. So it's going to come in very handy in our case also. But we originally got it from our service center, the counselor suite information, and then it's rolled on since then.
And I think I think with counselors, we also need to remind. We're also working with TG. So TG is doing all this training across the state, and then they're mentioning the counselor suite, and then they're mentioning the FAFSA the FAFSA information that is going to be in there. We also need to encourage students or inform the counselors to encourage students to use the RS tool, because if they use the RS tool, they won't get verified. They won't be selected for verification.
The transcripts are. Yeah.
So that's cutting a huge chunk of the financial aid process by not doing the verification, or by not going through the verification. So we need to encourage counselors to advocate students to start using, to wait, because you have to wait if the parents do their financial aid online. They have to wait 2 weeks after they submit it online. So to wait, not to do it, and then to use the financial aid, the IRS tool, so they can skip that huge process, or the huge step of the financial aid process.
Sorry, what is the RS tool?
I'm sorry?
IRS. I'm sorry, I misunderstood. I was saying IRS. Excuse me. Excuse me, I couldn't understand what. Excuse me, I didn't. Yeah, IRS tool. Okay, thanks.
Yeah. Oh, it's funny. Hispanic twin.
Sorry, excuse me.
That's it.
Okay, thank you, Jeff, and everyone else for that conversation. That was that's very exciting. That's very good stuff. Anybody from Combining App Type Subcommittee?
Yes. Just for the new people, because I need new people on the committee. Two of my former subcommittee people are no longer on here, so we need new people. This started out a little differently. As you're all aware, we often have issues with our dual credit students being able to use ApplyTexas for issues such as they don't qualify to use the waiver, for example, because one of the questions on there is that they have to have graduated high school, and none of them can answer that question correctly. And so we realized there's a little bit of a hiccup there with our application. So it started off as a dual credit. We were going to create a new application type, yet another one, and we were going to form this around just for our dual credit students. After we had our first meeting, we realized the biggest issue is, especially as we continue to expand the number of applications, is that the more we add, the more chances we get of them filling out the wrong one. And rather than heading that direction, we decided if we could make the application smarter by ordering our questions in the way that we drive them the direction we want them to go. Then we would end up with better data in the long run, especially on our domestic apps. It doesn't work so well in our international, but it works well with our domestic apps. So ultimately, maybe one domestic app and an international app, or something like that. And so this committee got changed to a combining app types committee, and it's something I think we've discussed almost every year this committee has been around. But as I say, the more we've expanded this, the more we sort of keep compounding our own problems with trying to keep them all up and what's on one and what's not on the other one, and they don't read the same. So I'm just looking for people who want to embark on the fun that it will be trying to look at, what's common about our apps, what's not common about our apps. Now, I'm not talking about asking all the same questions. It is, as they answer certain questions, it will give them the next set of questions based on the app type they've chosen. So it's a smart app rather than the way we were trying to do it was we would take the 4-year and pull the questions in that were unique to 4-year and plug those in, and the ones that were 2-year and those that were unique, we'd plug that. So we ended up with a bigger app, and that's what we kept getting scared of. But if we can make it to where it would push it all together. But
I might be interested in being on that committee because we have a similar situation with our Cutter app and some of the questions that don't apply from an international app versus a domestic regarding visas and things. So it's sort of the same lines. Go ahead and stick me on
I'd like to be on that too, and if we can combine. I was the one that submitted the agenda item, creating a phone app, so an app for the app. I guess that's what I was asking. Maybe that, and we had talked last year about making it more intuitive on the front end. And UT Austin had mentioned 20 years ago you had something like that. I think the other nationwide application that I won't say the name has that too, has that feature. So I'd like to do that, and we can remove the phone app. Maybe we can make that as a part of that subcommittee, feasibility of that, because that would be kind of intuitive to that discussion.
Yeah, as we're going through and changing the way we're doing it, it just kind of makes sense. That can kind of go together.
Are we talking about kind of like a wizard or something? Or are we talking about a new app that is kind of customizable or built on the fly? Or are we talking about the existing app types and something that would help the student know which one to pick?
Well, I think as they answer certain questions, if they've just said, well, I'm interested, I'm making this up. So they give us a date that is that they're going to start college, but yet the date of high school graduation is later, then red flag, that means they're dual credit. So it shifts them into the dual credit questions that are unique to them. Well, so sort of intuitive. And again,
asking some filtering questions from the beginning, and then we kind of know, instead of filling out the profile and then going and filling out the whole app, asking some questions from the beginning. The one that I saw, Tarrant County, has a nice design. What you've done, that was really nice. So we can look at different models of how they're doing it, the look and the feel, and then even transition to an actual app.
Is that an app that does that, or is that just a separate thing?
It's the application that our student goes on our website and complete that. But before they even start, there's an option. Okay, are you applying as a continuing ed student? Are you applying as a UG? Are you applying? So we can add something like, are you applying as an early high school student?
For our dual credits, we have them use our application off our website, and one of the first questions is, when are you graduating high school, and what is your birth date? I mean, that's actually a question before they even put their name in, because then it shifts them to what direction they have to go, and we did that because of our dual credits. And so that's kind of my thought process on this. Let's drive them to where we want them to go, not letting them guess that I'm headed in the right direction.
That sounds good, yeah. And we'd be always interested in those ideas, and also what features are in other. We can probably still do it for less than $4 or $5 an app if we put it in ours.
If anyone else is interested before we leave today, just let me know. I'd love to have a couple of more community college people, especially those who have tons of dual credit, because this is kind of where this, that's domestically, that's probably one of our more unique groups. But just come see me.
Jeremy, go ahead and add me in that too, since already have that kind of model, they might help us with this.
That's a great idea. Yeah, you guys have one of the nicer ones.
Okay, I'm going
Jeremy, go ahead and add me too.
All right, thank you.
Fantastic. I think that we'll have, at the end of the committee reports, perhaps a little bit of a cleanup for committees and talk about membership, because as we start this new year, we probably need to refresh some of those committees. A subcommittee for FAFSA and testing. Is that anybody's committee?
I think I'm on it. We didn't do anything. I don't know who the chair is. Who was it?
Who was it? It would have been the minutes from last one.
Yeah.
I'm going to refer to the minutes.
I hope I wasn't chair. Don't remember.
Rebecca was the chair of that committee. So we need a new chair for that committee, and I'm going to appoint either Cheryl or Cheryl. So,
Cheryl G-man.
Cheryl G., would you like to take that on? Fantastic. I don't expect much from your report right now unless you'd like to fill us in on your experience from our last meeting.
On this one, we actually have some discussions with ACT already. We started the discussions. We do need to have, I think we've mentioned before that Florida has the same already model. We do need to have the, I don't think I've ever gotten the contact information. Okay. So that we can start this the discussion with Florida and the way that the way that they're doing it. I think our ACT representative was a little hesitant, and he was actually he was actually thinking of coming today to the meeting. He was CC'd on the agenda and everything.
So that we've been talking about this, just so everyone knows, we've been talking about at least you're talking about the ACT, the College Board ACT, bringing in, it's been, what, Cheryl, 7, 8 years or so? And what that was that students would be able to, when they register for the exam, list ApplyTexas as one of the agencies that they could send their scores to. And then we could, when the students send their application, the institutions could access those scores. Because more and more, not just with the emergence of TRECs, but even before TRECs, we saw more schools not providing test scores on transcripts, and many of us don't accept test scores on transcripts as the official test score. So unfortunately, at the time, College Board and ACT leadership, which has now changed, said both organizations said they were for it. Bruce Walker, formerly with UT, was the one who was spearheading this. Kind of gives you an idea how long we've been talking about this. And so both organizations now have new leadership. So I definitely think, but you mentioned the state of Florida does have this. I believe the University of South Florida sort of manages that process. And I do have the contact person, at least when we talked about this 5 or 6 years ago, to see how that worked, because both College Board and ACT did say, at least in Florida, they were. And so it's up and running and functioning there now. And really, this is just a way for students to be able to send their scores to ApplyTexas, and then we could access those.
So, Jeff, do you want to be in the committee?
Sure. We just got a year to get it done because I'm off next year.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
So they're talking about sending. When you say sending to ApplyTexas, then it would go with. Then it would be sent with the information would be sent with the app, or what?
So there's a wide variety of ways. I think the most important thing is having ApplyTexas be listed as a receiving score agency, if you will, whatever, like our institutions are. So when a student registers to take the SAT or ACT, that the scores could be sent, and then institutions could access those when students actually submit their applications.
Discussion a long time.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, that has been an item that this committee has considered for a while, and so I think that'd be great. Cheryl, Jeff, if you guys would spearhead the continuation of that conversation, hopefully before Jeff leaves the committee.
And Cheryl.
And Cheryl. I'd be happy to participate.
There's the continuity.
He's trying to say I'm the new chair of this, so I can't.
Not so sure about that.
I think that either myself or Alberto will be present for that conversation. Speaking for Alberto. The subcommittee for T-Rex.
On that.
Yeah.
I'm not on it, and I want to be.
We didn't have a chair, and the subcommittee members were Jeremy and Daryle. And the report from the February meeting was nothing new.
Yeah.
Well, we definitely need a group talking about this. T-Rex.
Maybe that was why there was nothing to report.
Yeah.
Daryle, would you like to be chair of that committee?
Actually, no. I'm chair of so many other things going on right now in this coming year.
It's not that, Jeremy.
Jeremy, would you like to be chair of that committee?
No, he wasn't there.
Okay. We're going to find a chair for this before
we're going to find a chair, and I do want to be on the committee, but I'm on the local arrangements committee for TACRO, and that's going to sap all my time for this coming year. So I'm declining everything else in the world. But there are some issues on T-Rex that we need to focus on.
Thank you.
The issue before was it only had the exit level test scores on T-Rex. So the electronic T-Rex did not assist us in the admissions process decision for dual credit because it didn't have the 9th, 10th scores on there. We had to contact the high schools and get a separate report to get those scores. So that issue was never resolved, and it's going to be compounded now with the new end of course scores coming out that replace tax. So we're asking the TEA look at that with their vendor so that because what the issue was that when the specs were written for T-Rex, it only called for exit scores to be posted on T-Rex. And so that's all that's there. So when they get ready to do the new format to support the end of course test, someone needs to be talking to TEA to get them to put the test history on there, not just the exit score for high school, the senior exit score.
So I would recommend, only because we've talked with him a lot, and that's Glenn Shelton at TEA. Glenn is sort of the best person from the T-Rex technical side at TEA to find out. And since I think it was last year, right before TACRO last year, we had an issue with acknowledgement of transcripts and such, and they listened to us and made some changes to that. So I think it's just a matter we need to make sure that they know, because if they don't hear from us, then they're not going to make changes to it. But I definitely think we need a good group of 2- and 4-year folks on that committee, and have Glenn there as well to hear what, and to also give some recommendations of how that could be fixed, because I think they look to us for those recommendations to see how best we're using T-Rex from both the 2- and 4-year side.
Thank you. I agree. I think perhaps at least minimally our TE rep who comes to our college board, to our ApplyTexas meetings should be on this committee. Mm-hmm. Tim, you have a...
Well, I was just going to say, I don't know if this seems like to me that this was appropriate for this subcommittee to help with, and Jose can jump in on this too, but I think this kind of came up after our last meeting last year. But we are implementing. I know it's been talked about for a long time, but we're implementing automatic requests through T-Rex for high school transcripts upon submission of the app. And we would like to have some help from the committee, and maybe the subcommittee is a good place to start on implementation of that. We're well along toward solving the technical problems. I know the coordinating board has been involved in that, and they've written an API for us to call. But in terms of actually how is it going to affect people, and so that we can do it in a way that's successful and turns out to be the really good thing that we think it will be. We'll need some help from you all and in terms of implementation, how to move forward, how to put it in the app, where to put it in the app, what happens when this gets created, and make sure that there aren't any big bottlenecks or whatever problems we haven't thought of ourselves, in terms of receiving institutions and also the counselors at the high schools.
I think that's fantastic. Yeah, that sounds wonderful. And Cheryl, did you volunteer to be chair of that committee?
I'll be happy to chair that committee.
Fantastic.
I'll work with Cheryl.
And Mary is also volunteering to serve on the committee.
This
I
is
don't
exciting.
know if Jose, you had anything to add to that, but I know we've been working together on this for a while.
No, I think, we just need to work out a couple of kinks on the API and make sure that more institutions are able to receive the transcripts electronically. I think last time that was the issue, that not every institution is set up to receive transcripts electronically. Right. So we need to work with those institutions, and then so that we can fully implement without being a mandate, fully implement before it becomes a mandate, actually.
Well, I think it's both, Jose. I think it's not just institutions, because, we have colleges that still don't accept Speedy. Mm-hmm. But there's nowhere near the number of high schools that don't send TRECs. And I think from a school counselor, actually more of the registrar and the records clerk, because those are the folks that send the transcripts, often it's much easier for them to print the transcript and send it versus sending a TREX transcript. So we need to find a way to make this easier for the schools, mm-hmm. But also to make sure that the elements that we want, end of course exams, those class rank, grade point average, hopefully on a scale that's determined. Those are the simple things that we would at least be able to make sure that when we upload that into RSIS that they're useful. Because right now, sometimes and it variant. You can take two schools from the same district and you get different fields of data. And and the students are the ones that are disadvantaged because it may not include a rank, it may not have senior course mm-hmm. information on there, and so we're having to ask for it again.
I know the other issue that we're still in discussions with TEA is whenever the request is sent to TREX, we want the application number to come back with the transcript, so that it's going to be an easy match for the institutions to match those transcripts to the students' record. They were having some issues, or they were talking about that's going to take, it's out of their standards and blah blah. But if all the institutions agreed on that method, then they would change their EDI or EDU or whatever file, so that it's. I see it as a simple thing, but we still need some discussions on that.
That's a TACRO listserv question, isn't it? And to get the discussion going about everyone agreeing that they want the app ID on there, I really don't think that's going to be it.
On the post-secondary side, you don't think that's?
I don't think that's going to be a.
Whenever you get the information, you can either use it or just keep on doing the same way that you were doing it.
No. Okay. Who else on this committee?
I'll be on the committee.
Everyone.
We're all sold. We love the conversation.
Who else? I'm sorry. Okay.
I do think it would be great. In our former structure we had, where we actually had a couple of high school folks, Jeff Pilchek, who was here at Westlake, provided some great resource. So I do think that it would be great for us to look and seeing if we could to engage some high schools who use TREX, and just to hear from some of them about what's realistic and what's not. Because I'd hate to give them or to put something that was just a great idea, but in theory just may not ever happen.
I have a rather a poll question for the group. All of your area school using the TRACs? Some of them? We have biggest ISD, Fort Worth ISD, and they're not using it, and we get very few from here and there. So I wasn't sure if everybody on your area was using it, or who's.
I have about half.
And I think it's sad because the actual statute is for high school to high school. So some counselors were actually confused about the statute. They thought that they had to do it for colleges, but right now it's just at this moment it's just for high school to high school transfer.
Okay, yeah.
I mean, if the idea there's other discussions that if that system worked that way for colleges to start using it for college to college. So, like right now, it's just discussion, but it's not mandated.
So, Jose, one of the things that I know there are probably more important things for the coordinating board to focus on, but with this moving into the next session, because we've seen, I think year 1 or 2 of implementation, TEA commissioner sent out a memo to superintendents that said school to school is required, school to college was recommended, but the language really wasn't significant enough to really encourage schools to send it from school to college. And ideally, it would be great if it could be a requirement for schools to be able to. I mean, colleges send Speedy from back and forth all the time. And I'll mention this only because there are other platforms where we're getting transcripts from that are not TRECs. And they are often, and it's usually it's schools that are more, originally was more affluent schools, but now it's public and private high schools that are sending docufied Naviance transcripts. And it's a PDF, but at least you get that versus having to, and sometimes even you can create that into OCR and turn that into data. So I think, there are high schools that just feel like they're easier solutions than TRECs. And I just have a fear that if we don't do something about it, then we'll continue to have this conversation every single year with TRECs usage. I know at one point there was a conversation that may even be out there because a high school counselor here in the Austin area told me about a listserv or a list of schools that were high schools that were not using TRECs. And so schools were nervous to be on that list because they didn't want to be listed as a school that didn't use TRECs. Well, if that's what it takes for them to use TRECs, great. To not be on the list, that's perfect. If that list would help them increase their usage, I'm okay with that. Put them on blast, make them increase their usage. It's important for us because, again, it impacts the student's ability to get a timely admission decision and packaging for financial aid to full consideration for scholarships.
I think this is this is a perfect timing to recommend that type of change or mandate change or whatever during the session, so that maybe we have to require it so that we can have more usage on the TRECs. I mean, the system itself, I mean, they spend a lot of money for just that usage. I mean, they would have an added value to add post-secondary institutions so that to increase the usage and require it.
Texas A&M has staved off third-party vendors for years. I mean, pushed. And this year, we started accepting from DocuFied. And our pubs reflect that we still want TRECs first. It's in the student's benefit. We process, our processing is geared toward TRECs, and we're trying to get it into Banner, trying to get it to load. But we opened it up, and it just broke my heart to do that. It really did, but...
I mean, again, this is the perfect time to do a statute change.
Excited to hear that.
To recommend a statute change and make it a requirement.
And then follow up with questions of, why how can the system be improved, so that, what is it, so what is it that these vendors provide that makes them go there?
I think if it's required, then the higher ed would have to be on the table to improve the system. Because now, we have a stake on the system.
Well, and if it's required, then maybe they'll start having the discussion. Right now, it's like, I'll do something else.
Right. Do we have a number of institutions that are not set up to receive TREX? Tim?
Oh, I can probably find that information of our.
The other thing we don't want to make it required if institutions are not going to be able to fulfill the requirement, or if they're going to have to spend a lot of money on IT to convert whatever they're using.
It seemed to me that I don't know how good the data was. I did just a little search myself on the Speedy site and on our site of kind of comparing who looked like they were set up versus our service community, and it looked like that it was most of them, but not 90%. It might have been, it was over half, well over half, but maybe on some of the smaller schools, the community colleges, it wasn't that much. But on the four-year schools, it was probably 75%, I would guess. But I can go back and look at that again.
75%
of our users are set up to receive Speedy, to receive through Speedy, at least.
75%.
Yeah, and again, the caveat is I don't know how good that data was. I just kind of went on the Speedy site and our site and tried to compare, but I'd have to check with the Speedy people and say, is this up to date? Does this look right? And want to vet that data. But it looked like certainly the majority of people are set up to receive Speedy, apparently. Whether they've actually received anything, I don't know, but they've at least got an account with Speedy as a receiver.
Any other discussion on TREX? Fantastic. I think that has a lot of ambitious goals moving forward as a subcommittee. Cheryl, good luck. I will be there. Reviewing the minutes from our last meeting, from the end of the last committee, I was looking at the subcommittees that we had reporting, and I'm going to propose to the group that we continue the subcommittees that did meet in the last term of our committee, and I would invite people to volunteer to be chairs of those subcommittees. And so I'm just going to read you the three that we did not discuss and ask if we would like to perpetuate those. The first one was the student correspondence group. It was a subcommittee looking at the communication that was going out from ApplyTexas to students upon application creation, submission, and completion. I was the chair for that committee, or the member responsible for that subcommittee, and I would look to the group if anybody would like to be a part of that process or take that piece over. Seeing none, we'll keep moving. Graduate and international application. Does anybody want to spearhead the graduate and international application review or subcommittee, if necessary? That was Pat, yes.
That's not on the committee anymore.
Oh, okay. Yeah, UT's not on. I'll put Catherine Rouchet Herdman on. If you're listening, sorry.
Make a note of that. And finally, the scholarship committee, and this really is poignant since that was a conversation that we had at the beginning of the meeting today to discuss the information about the scholarships. This would be reviewing the scholarship application for schools that are participating in the scholarship application. And so these would be, I'm going to use the term loosely, standing subcommittees in the event that we need to have conversations about those. I'm not requiring or expecting these groups to meet consistently, but as items come forward, if the subcommittees could review these prior to the board meeting. Very good. I will find some folks to serve on those committees. Dr. Heinzing? Okay. Thank you, sir.
Ethan, I'd like to volunteer for the high school counselor suite.
I already had you on my list.
Didn't hear that.
Okay, so to do cleanup for the remainder of the subcommittees, if you are the chair of the subcommittee, I would invite you to solicit members and then let me know if anybody would like to serve on those committees. Either come to me or come to the chair of the committee, and I'll tell you what we have so far. To refresh everybody's memory, Jeff Fuller for the high school counselor suite, Jeremy Thomas for the combining app types, that includes information about dual credit, Cheryl Moon for FAFSA testing, Cheryl Rich for the T-Rex subcommittee. Still need a representative for the student correspondence subcommittee. It's going to be a hard sell, it looks like. And we had who for Graduate International?
Catherine Ruche Herdman. She's one of my associate directors. ROUECHE-HERDMAN.
I think the chair has to be part of the committee.
Okay,
and then
Cheryl Rich,
members,
chair.
Yeah, members of the committee don't have to be. They can be from the institutions.
And Dr. Michael Heinze will be subcommittee chair for the scholarship committee.
And I'll be on that committee too, because I have somebody from A&M who would be interested.
Cheryl, do we just need to write your name next to each committee?
No.
Okay, very good. The process for subcommittee organization, or how we would move forward with this, what we have done in the past is we've actually asked subcommittee members to come in the day prior to the advisory board meeting to meet as a subcommittee group. I would invite the subcommittee chairs to entertain that option as a way. It's most of us, well, some of us have to travel overnight anyway to make this meeting. Or if you would like to conduct that meeting via phone or other technological device of your choosing. But one of the things that I would like to do is to make sure that we meet prior to the advisory board meeting for the report. Any conversation, questions, or considerations for the subcommittee that were not addressed?
I would just like to add that I'm happy to to be pinged or included. I'm not looking to add a bunch of meetings to my schedule, but if you're at a certain point where you really would like some feedback from the technical team as part of your ongoing discussions on any of these subcommittees, feel free to throw me an email or contact me.
Well, and Tim, I know as we go forward, we're definitely going to want you in on ours as we start trying to figure out how to logically build this. But I think at the beginning we can kind of not pain you with the very beginning of it.
Thanks.
Until we need to. That's fine. Part of our conversation this morning, especially Tim from your report, dealing with data migration and technical aspects, really resonated with the question: do we need to have a technology or something named in that convention technology subcommittee to discuss those particulars? And would it be advantageous for members of our universities who are our technical experts be in part of that conversation?
That's, it sometimes helps us. We just kind of go along, and so we often don't hear about issues until we hear about them, and then somebody might bring them up here, or somebody might corner me somewhere and say something, or at the conference there was a session about, I know we're going to talk about the conference in a minute, and the conference was a session about meeting the technical team, and there were a lot of people there from the previous day's Speedy conference, and so we got a lot of questions about this, that, and the other, and you can kind of gauge what's on people's minds, and I don't have a particular recommendation about that, but I think that if people do have issues with regard to transmission and consumption of the data as it comes in, that might be a good candidate for a subcommittee.
I'm looking for a volunteer to chair that subcommittee for technology. And if we take in consideration Jose's advice that we can look at members of our universities to be on subcommittees to provide feedback, then it perhaps may not be that the subcommittee chair needs to be a technical expert, but rather just coordinate the technical experts together. I'll let you think about it.
Don't say it, Cheryl. Don't. Come on, Cheryl. Come on, Cheryl.
I know my.
I know Sean wants to.
I know. See, I know I have people there who
Alberto and I will figure it out.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Okay, other questions, or we'll conclude the section on subcommittee reports. Any other items, conversation?
Can I make sure I have contact information for everybody who's on whatever I'm on?
We'll try to provide this as best as we can, represent that back in our minutes about membership and participants. And hand out business cards. That's a great idea.
Roster that Jose.
Oh.
All right, the remaining items on the agenda, to me, appear to be new business or items for consideration from the advisory board based on a variety of the information coming forward and items that have generated or come to light in between the interim between the last board meeting and this meeting. And so if everybody is in favor, we'll move forward with new business items. Number 7, discussion on the purpose and function of the annual conference.
That was my item. Okay. I can just briefly say what I intended, just to evaluate how we're doing with our conference. We did combine the Speedy and ApplyTexas annual conference, a lot of great feedback. Do we need to make any changes for the new members? I'm not sure how many have attended in the past. We usually have a Monday and a Tuesday in June, correct? Where we have the annual conference, and the committee membership acts as an advisory committee to the coordinating board, but also kind of a liaison with the other institutions that are out there. So that was all I had really intended, make sure that we're progressing well. Do we need to do anything differently? We often look at feedback from the conferences.
Do we have that feedback? Did we get it this summer already? And I just don't remember it in my email?
Well, first thing I would say about the annual meeting we had this year was actually held in conjunction with TACRO. And I'm going to, since I know a former past president of TACRO who's with us today, I might ask Trey if he has any comment on the annual meeting.
I don't think that we've received any feedback as far as numbers or that kind of thing from. I know that I guess Becky Lothringer and Joe Papari were coordinating together, but I've not seen any report per se. I understand that. I mean, just anecdotally, things went well and people were pleased, but not to see any actual written feedback or anything like that. No.
I'm just wondering if, because I know we did have a conversation last year that we would not have that conference put forth by this committee, but it would be put forth by TACRO. And so it may be that, and I know Joe was and Becky were really the ones leading that, so it could be that that's who we need to go to find out what evaluations were, what feedback, what that kind of thing may look like, because I haven't seen anything TACRO listserv, but at the same time it could be that we just need to ask for it probably.
But at least for this one, we actually still did the agenda. And so out of this group. So it would be good for us to know. Now that may change going forward since it's now a TACRO event, but it'd be good for us to know what happened or what's going on.
I'll contact the TACRO executive board and enter into a conversation with them about this, about a continuation of this program.
And is that the way? Because I think there was at least on my part, and maybe the executive was TACRO going to lead this conference from henceforth, or was it just for this year?
I think that's an open question.
It was trial basis, and maybe that's really the feedback that we need, is to find out if that's the way TACRO wants to proceed with it. Is it worked well? Do they continue to handle it and as part of one of their Speedy summer conferences and make it the ApplyTexas Speedy Conference, 2-day conference type of deal, similar to their summer roundtables with universities and 2-year colleges?
I think that's an excellent point. I don't want to make any assumptions on behalf of this advisory board or TACRO. And so I'd be happy to petition the organization about continuation of support if that's the intent or the desire of this body. I'm receiving some support.
We could do it, but why it worked last year is because Rebecca was on this committee.
Right.
So it was TACRO, but she did it because she had a lot of knowledge. So if you have somebody that's not on the committee, that's going to be tough.
And that's an important point, is just TACRO leading it or running it or whatever, but what degree would they want continued involvement of this committee on that if they're going to take it and run with it?
As a new member of this committee, but a long-standing member of TACRO, the name says ApplyTexas, so I would just think that it would be it should be a joint effort, since we're representing ApplyTexas and they are representing TACRO.
Any other items, consideration, or conversation we need to have about that? I will approach TACRO and ask if they're interested in continuing this partnership. I think it's been a very nice transition from the coordination board to support provided by TACRO, who provided us the technological support for conference registration and some of the logistic management this last year. Yes, Trey?
Ethan, I think that's probably, as you say that's probably a better way to administer it, or maybe we can go forth utilizing everything, is that I think TACRO would be more than happy to supply the background assistance as far as the registration process, since we already have a mechanism in place to assist the ApplyTexas committee and allow ApplyTexas committee to put forth the agenda, maybe, so to speak, and apply whatever registration fees and with the new system that's about to come on board, I don't think it'd be a problem to delineate between whether you're attending both or just one, and making sure that whatever money's needed to be given to ApplyTexas to run the logistics of the meeting and that kind of thing, I don't think it would be that big a problem. And I'm speaking on behalf of the executive committee at that point. But I don't think it would be that hard to set up.
Thank you, Trey. I think that is very reassuring and positive in consideration for the continuation of our annual meeting. I believe, and I'm not going to put this in I'll take your assent on this, that the annual meeting is still a program that we want to perpetuate. Do I have any dissension on that comment? Okay, very good. Then I'll ask TACRO about, I will be attending their annual meeting in the following, is it next week? And I'll try to talk to their executive board while I'm there.
Ethan, when you're having that discussion, rather than us doing this yearly, which is what we did this year,
yes,
can it just be more of a long-term discussion?
Sure.
So we're not having to come up and do this again. We're agreeing to do this for the next 5 years. We're agreeing to do this for the next 10 years, and we'll readdress it, at that point based on the needs that we're seeing. Just so we're not, as this committee changes and as TACRO changes, we're not having to constantly go back, renegotiate, or go back, have the discussion over and over and over.
Thank you, Jeremy. That's a good point.
Jeremy, I think that's probably what the kind of feedback that we need to see, did they ascertain from this meeting was, do we need to have a biannual, or does it need to continue on year after year, that type of thing. So And having never been to either one, I can't tell you.
Very good. Any other conversation, discussion on that item? Seeing none, the next item for consideration is the consideration of creating a phone app. And I know, Matt, you had talked about moving that to the subcommittee for combining application times.
Yeah, I think that would be appropriate because we were just starting to talk about it. I mean, that was just an idea that we don't really have anything to talk about other than just if it's feasible at this point, but maybe we can just move to include that.
Tim, is there any way in that line, though, that your team can kind of look at the feasibility of us converting the ApplyTexas to where it's accessible through a mobile device? Sure. Just to kind of figure out, time and effort and what that's going to take as far as building the app. Because I think it's a great idea, because if you're not mobile, that's the way 90% of our students are doing things now. They're not using a PC. They're not sitting there doing it.
And I think, we can look at various kinds of mobile devices and how it would work. I think it's a question in my mind about something that has a lot of input and many pages to it, whether like an iPhone would be an appropriate device for that. But there are smaller kind of network devices that are certainly smaller than the size of a laptop or a desktop PC that we could look at. Yeah, we can start doing some research on that.
That's a very good question, and I think that not only looking at mobile application, but mobile website and the scalability and all those other questions, it's a much broader question than just maybe perhaps a phone app.
Well, and it's a great point, because if we're not, we're missing the boat.
Right.
And we need to go, we need to cater to the population. And 10 years ago, that meant making sure you're on the internet. Now it's making sure you're on their phone. So there's a difference.
Definitely. Okay, so that's then referred to committee. And so for two committees, if we do have a technology committee, and then also the combining application times. Cheryl will be the consistency between those committees. The next item is consideration of performing the a usability and access study.
That was also mine.
Man.
I had one day where I just kind of shot Jose a message of things I was thinking of. It could be, it's really embedded in part of that. It was all kind of the same. I had one thought, and this was how it divided out. So it really is, that's how my phone app deal kind of evolved. So I don't know. We had one a number of years ago. Yeah, but it might not really be appropriate to do that in the same way.
I know that we did have one completed not too long ago.
May of 2010.
2010. And so, Tim, do you have any recommation on that? Is there a standard that we need to think about?
Not really, but I think we're looking at 3 years since it. I think it's reasonable to look at doing something like that again. It says access. Is that accessibility? Is that what you meant? Access. It says usability and access. Does that mean that? Does that mean accessibility, like accessibility, like adherence to legal things regarding disabilities?
No, it's more in usability and access for students and how they're, I guess, the different media that how they're coming into the application.
Because we're part of the University of Texas at Austin's development group, we have certain things we adhere to with regard to accessibility. We also get security scans on a regular basis. But as far as usability, we did make some significant changes as a result of that study, which I think was done. I wasn't involved with the team at that point, but I guess it involved a class or some students at the university, and there are various ways of doing that kind of a thing. But we found it very useful, I think, as a team, and installed a number of changes as a result of that. I think it's always a good idea to redo that kind of a thing.
Yeah, and I would just say I continue to hear from high school counselors and also some of our independent universities in Texas that use both ApplyTexas and the other application. national application, and there's much desire left from our application. And I just feel, and often my question is, well, what would you like to see done differently? And I have to also recognize to them that this is not a vendor app like that one is. Those are the simple things that we have. And the reality also is, if we do more, then the institutions are going to have to pay more, which means our students may have to end up paying a higher application fee. So, but I will say that when we did this last, it was great, but I think we probably should build that into just a normal cycle, and it probably should be something that encompasses many different parts of the state. Just because what's happening in South Texas and Dallas are two very different things at times, and I think it should just be something that we build in there. And I really do feel like, because I noticed we don't have an independent college member on the committee, and we have had that in the past, and I do think that we need to engage them in the dialogue, because we have independent colleges using the application, and they could probably bring much guidance and suggestion to the application that maybe we just don't know of.
And I'd like to, I don't second that. We're always looking to improve the feature set, and we hear a lot of anecdotes about how it's not as good as that or not as good as this, but we'd like some specifics would be nice, because there are some things are easily done and some things are not, and so we're always interested in specific ideas of improvement that we can install.
Jose, I don't know if it's possible at this time. I know it's off tangent, but there is an independent college in Texas that would like to be a part of this committee that I think has given me suggestions, so I'm happy to share that. I don't know if there's a way that we could include them in part of this committee, but we do have many independent colleges using ApplyTexas that I think at least, and when we opened this door the last time, we did put 2, but unfortunately the institutions, one of them never attended, and I think one member only attended 1 or 2 meetings. So, but there's institutions that would be willing to step up and be involved in this discussion and would commit to the meetings.
Yeah, I definitely have to look at the process, because the nomination process did include the ICUT schools. So I just have to ask procedure-wise if we can reopen the nomination process just for that unseat. Available seat, or if we can just move it to next year. But yeah, I do agree. We do. It was noticeable that there wasn't any nominations for that category.
And I respect the fact that nominations, they were given an opportunity to be nominated.
Yes.
And so regardless of the bylaws for the committee, for membership, whether it can be incorporated this year or if it needs to be considered for next year, then we can minimally try to include that, for example, Jeremy, in your committee for the combining of application type.
Exactly, and any subcommittee, they don't have to be a member of the committee itself. So that's
Jeff,
another way to engage participation.
Definitely.
Well, and Jeff, this is an open meeting. So where they wouldn't be a voting member, there's nothing that says that we can't invite somebody to come and sit with us. So
I agree. I just don't think people know that these meetings are open as we do.
Well, if we have someone identified, my recommendation would be let's go ahead and invite them to come in. They can discuss with us, but they're just, when it comes down to a vote, they're at this point not a voting member, and that may be good feedback for us as we're looking to make changes and build, apps and that sort of thing. Just a thought.
That's great feedback. Matt, any other conversation or consideration on your item, consideration of the usability and access study?
No, that was excellent. Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you. All right, our final item on the agenda is consideration for changes to the application for the 2015-2016 cycle. And so I'd like to start with the first item in that group. We've got 4 items, and if there's other items, we'll entertain those as well. The first item, changing essay topics. And I'm not sure who submitted that question. But we do have a handout, I believe. We can take a break, yes. It's been requested we take a break before we start this item. Is that all right with everybody? Let's take a 10-minute break, and we'll resume in 10 minutes. Thank you. All right, welcome back, everybody. As we went into the break, we were looking at the consideration for the changes in the upcoming application cycle. And on our agenda, we list 2015-2016 cycle. Is it the 2014-2015 cycle that we're looking at instead of 2015-2016?
Yes.
Okay. So just a minor adjustment to the agenda that we're looking at next year's, not 2 years out.
Darn, I thought we had a couple years to do all this stuff.
Thank you, Dr. Heinze. Okay, the first item for consideration for the application change for this upcoming year would be the consideration of changing essay topics. And if no one claims that submission, we do have a handout that I would refer everybody to for consideration under the current essay topics versus proposed essay topics. The current essay topics are what we're familiar with, the topic A. I'm letting you finish your cookie. Topic A, topic B, topic C, which we're all familiar with. The proposed essay topics is both an expansion of the topics and perhaps other items are to be recommended from that.
This was Texas A&M's idea of some essay topics that we had gathered from feedback from the schools, from our recruiters, just in general. So I wrote some down, or I had some written down, so that we could take a look and see if they work. I don't think I need to read them for everyone, do I?
No, but has everybody had an opportunity to look at the list of proposed changes? So the first consideration for this advisory board is, would we entertain changing the existing application essays? Is it time to do so? Okay.
How long have these been in effect?
Since time immemorial, probably.
Then I would.
Before there was an ApplyTexas.
Yes.
A long time.
I would say so.
She graduated in 2008, and she said that the ones that are right now were the ones she used. So it's been
time.
Yeah, it's time.
Okay, so this is definitely a timely consideration about updating the essays that we are receiving for institutions. Now, this is a much broader question than just what is the topic of the essay. It's institutions' use of the application essays and how those meet the needs of our membership. And to that end, I think that perhaps this needs to be reviewed by a subcommittee for consideration and involve some other people who have probably very strong feelings about essays and essay submission.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay. Does this meet the criteria of any of our existing subcommittees? Does this fall into that category? Any of the categories? Or does this need to be an ad hoc committee?
Ad hoc.
It needs to be an ad hoc.
Very good. And I would be hesitant, but probably right to ask Cheryl to lead the ad hoc committee on the essay change with the proposed changes that Texas A&M provided.
I will be happy to.
Thank you. I don't mean to overburden you, but I do respect the fact that you brought it to our attention and have examples. Yes.
I think on this one, we definitely do need feedback from TACRO membership or other institutions just outside the membership. It is an important thing that you're proposing, so we do need more feedback than just the membership.
Okay.
I have, if memory serves me correct, when we changed the essay questions last in our former structure, UT Austin did also solicit input from their faculty. So I definitely think that would be a great opportunity for us to do again.
I think family, but I
also think high school counselors or even high school students we really should solicit from them, because what are they, community service is really big for us on our campus. Our faculty want to know about that. We get that from the essays. But is that really what the students are into or ready?
So we're looking at a variety of interested constituents that we need to include in this subcommittee. Not only our membership board, our member bodies of ApplyTexas, and their need for administering an admissions process by reviewing this material, but also by faculty in terms of what they're looking for. I would even suggest that we actually have some consideration on the wording and the type of questions used, and by perhaps a diagnostician, somebody who can make comment on whether or not that they're correctly proposed to students to respond to, but also from our constituents of high school counselors and current students. I think that would be a broad and ambitious charge for this ad hoc subcommittee. And so that's something that we need to take forward. So if seeing any concern or conversation otherwise, I would like to submit that to subcommittee and refer that out for committee review. Any other comment?
We'll get moving on this fast, too.
Okay. This in this committee, even if you're not volunteering right now, it really is an ambitious goal. So as you think on this topic and you can provide Cheryl any support, please do so.
See Rich at tamu.edu. Just send me a note.
That's a big point, and that will be an interesting consideration for this year. The second item is consideration of residency prompt for out-of-state high school students residing in Texas, if I'm reading that correctly. Did somebody bring that to consideration? Mm-hmm. Jeremy.
This was actually sent to me from Northeast Texas Community College. They've got several students, and I know we briefly discussed this on the listserv over the summer, but they've got several students that are going to out-of-state high schools, but they live in Texas. But when they do the application and they fill it out and they put that they graduated from out-of-state high school, it's stopping them. I mean, it stops. It's not allowing it to transmit. And so that was their concern, is that the data was not even reaching them. I don't know anything beyond that because I don't have that issue, but I told them I'd bring it to the committee.
A good point. It's a technical issue that we perhaps have a stop in place for residency's requirement or statement about in-state attending an out-of-state high school.
Now, I agree it should be an audit issue, but it should be something that still allows them to submit. Definitely. It's a red flag. There's something weird there with that student, and as an admissions person on the other side, we should be looking at that, but we still want the data to make that decision.
So it sounds like what might be currently happening is there's an audit that doesn't allow them to proceed on the assumption that if you're in an out-of-state high school that you're not
a resident.
In Texas, not a resident. And so what you might want instead would be some sort of maybe a little something that'll kind of say, did you really mean to put this? And then just just let it go. It's up to you as to how we audit the app. The app can say the app can not pay any attention to where they say they went to high school in terms of that, or it can say, is this right? You're a Texas resident, but you go out of state. Click here to verify that you want to continue as a in this app.
That's kind of strange, because normally what happens when the residency rules are confused is it still submits the app through, but it will just say, yes, that's right. It'll give a pending whatever it thinks.
I've not had an issue where I could duplicate this or try it myself, but this is just, and they did screenshots, which I sent across the listserv over the summer, which y'all weren't on at the time. But I can re-forward those to you, Tim, so you can take a look. But
is that part of the residency determination dynamic part of the app there, where they're where it's trying to decide whether you're a resident, and then the next question's based upon the answer to the previous question, and it goes, wait a minute, I'm confused now, and I can't go forward. If that's what it is, then then yeah, well, we can address how that handles it. But it'd be nice to get verification that's a real issue and have it someone actually do it. Let's watch.
Yeah, this is from like June or July, if I remember correctly. It's been a while.
Is it an issue that it stops the application, or is it just that it doesn't recognize them as for in-state tuition? Because we have a lot of students that apply that have graduated from out-of-state schools, and we get the application. And we have an internal process to where it does a match if it's a Texas address and an out-of-state school. Then we look at that record individually, and we may require other documentation to verify residency. But the applications, I think, are coming through.
That's us also.
It just lets us know that it's not an automatic determination that they're in-state resident.
And this is where I'm at a loss because this is not my issue.
Well, I think it's
this is from someone else.
If by they mean stop is they thought it's basically telling them something else than they thought it would tell them about their residency versus not letting them actually submit the app.
Absolutely.
Two different issues.
Yeah, from the error, it does look like it stops the application. So there is an issue there.
Yeah, let me know where that is.
I'll send
exactly.
it to you.
Yeah.
Okay. You found it faster than I did. I was trying to look for it myself.
Okay, so this is a logic probably question on the technical side. And Tim, if you would investigate that and we can address it.
I guess the question for the committee is, Tim, if it is doing a hard stop, how do we want it to continue so he knows how to fix it?
Yeah. What behavior do you want there?
Do we want it just to submit no matter what, and we make the determination on what to do next on the other side?
I say yes.
Yes.
The attempt, the logic, the historical factor that is taken into consideration was to try to build the conversation or the question selection process of residency determination consistently from the coordinating board into the app. And so there's just one step there that's getting caught.
Right.
And I think that that's invaluable that we do as much residency determination through the app as possible for consistency and continuity. But I agree. That should not be the hard stop. And so that
and he may not be off. Do we want him to ask the question, are you sure you meant to put this, and then let it go on? Because it is sort of we recognize this is odd before it continues. I think that's not a bad idea. I don't think we've lost anything by asking that extra step.
I don't think there's a problem with asking that step if it's not something that causes a lot of problem in the.
Well, because technically it would only happen for that probably small number.
But if it's just a pop-up, that's not anything. We just don't want a hard stop. Right. But would it go through then as a, how would it? Should it go?
Yeah,
would it go as non-resident?
I think the issue is kind of what happens next, because it's such a dynamic part of the app. If it's then assuming that you're non-resident, it's going to ask you a separate set of questions, and you might not get answers to it. I don't know how y'all consume that data, but on UT Austin, all of the questions that get answered along that dynamic thing are then stored, and then we determine the residency as part of our application load. But if some of the questions aren't answered because the app sent them in one direction instead of another, that's something to consider. So we'd have to. It's more than just simply not stopping them. It's like, well, what really?
Flow.
Yeah, what's the flow from there?
Is there? I don't remember. Is there an unknown?
I'd have to look. I don't know if Jose has something up there, but.
Yep. Undetermined.
Yeah, this.
Yes.
Well, that's what that would be then.
Go.
It would be undetermined because we have conflicting data.
I think that we just need to look at whether or not we prohibit that to go forward. Allow it to go forward. I appreciate what you're saying about, Jeremy, about having an additional prompt, are you sure? But since I also think that this is a very small population of students that are probably affected in this manner, I think we just let it go forward and then let our admissions staff decipher the correct residency determination.
But I do agree with Cheryl as far as how it's
the flow,
how it's designated should be undetermined, or ever how that's worded as it comes through.
Yeah, I don't think non-resident's appropriate there. Because
no, I don't think so either.
You would in that case, it sounds like you want them treated as if they said they did go to a Texas high school.
Well, undetermined just means that. We're saying we don't know.
But I mean, yeah, and again, we'll look at the flow, but the way I understand the way it works is that depending upon the answer, the next questions are dependent upon that answer.
Oh, right,
And
correct. So it would be, is there a Texas resident? It would keep on going.
Right, because the screenshot you just sent, there's clearly, you selected a non-Texas high school, but said you lived in Texas for 36 months, and that's where the language is saying, these two things don't mesh, so we're going to stop. So that's where we have to take a look at and see, does it need to stay the same? Or if it doesn't, how do we change that so that it can still go, get loaded, move through? But I want to stress here, not impact the current rules that are in place there, because I'd hate for this to impact something else where you'd see a spike in apps that have to be reviewed for residency determination at that point.
Barry had a good point about how our military applicants, whose families are in the military, are determined. You might want to look at that, Tim, and see what the flow is there.
So, Jeff, did I understand you to say that where that little glitch is where it's part of the 36-month decision?
Well, at least what they see, at least what they see says that you answered the question, you're a Texas resident, but also indicated that you've not lived in Texas for 36 consecutive months, and that's where it sort of stopped at that point on the application.
Those seem to be contradicting. At this point, the logic says assumes that's a contradiction and there's a problem with the input.
Well, on that specific question, you have to be a Texas, so that's why it stopped it right there because of that rule. But I was thinking more along the lines where we have someone that crosses the state line because their mother is a teacher in Las Cruces, New Mexico, and graduates from a New Mexico high school, but is a resident of Texas, and that's where we're not seeing those kind of errors. But on this, that is a fatal error right there as far as that rule for residency, because you have to graduate from a Texas high school. You have to have lived in Texas for 36 months up to that graduation. So that is a fatal error on that question. So I really don't know where to go from that, but they wouldn't be able to claim residency based upon that. So if they do that, maybe it does need a prompt there to say, but then I'm thinking, no, they would want to circumvent it then. I don't know. I don't have an option to that.
Well, I think we should just let it continue on as in-state questions, but on the back end, when it determines are they in-state non-resident or cannot figure this out, we basically let the system say, I don't know, you need to figure it out on your own. So how that downloads, that needs to be the answer for those individuals.
I'd be happy at the next meeting to come back with some more information, more detailed information about exactly how that flow works, because I know it's dynamic and maybe with some options for how we could, at least the decisions made, how that would make things proceed from there and fill in the correct fields for y'all to be able to do your residency determination accurately. Okay. So I'd be afraid of messing that up based on whatever decisions made here.
Excuse me, I like it. We have I'm from Brownsville. We have a lot of students who have not lived in, let's say, Brownsville for 36 months, but they're American citizens, but they went to school in Mexico, but then through UT they evaluate their transcripts, and they get to graduate, let's say, in 2 years or a year and a half, because they got the majority of their credits over there. But then they're applying. How would the universities take them as, they haven't lived in the United States for the preceding 36 months. How is that, how do they go about doing this? Because they've gone to school, graduated from high school. How would a university look at them? They're probably U.S. citizens, but they have family over there. I don't know those particulars, but they are graduating from high school, from Art High School, but have them, I'm going to say 2/3 of their credits or maybe half of their credits from Mexico, and it went through a legit thing through University of Texas, when they evaluate?
If they're a U.S. citizen and they did the 12 months prior to graduation as far as residency is concerned, then they're in state.
Right, okay.
If they're not U.S. citizens, then they have to have that 3 years prior to graduation and graduate from a Texas high school in order to pay in-state tuition.
Okay. All right.
Now that one's not a choice. That one's outlined in that statute.
Can you repeat that just real quick? What you said?
If they are U.S. citizens, are permanent residents, and they lived here 12 months prior to graduation, they can even come from another state, and they graduate from a Texas high school, then they are qualified to do in-state tuition. But if they're non-U.S. citizens and they don't do the 3 years prior to graduation, then they can't sign the waiver. I mean, that's one of the questions.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
And that's, I'm sorry, go ahead, Jeannie.
It almost makes me wonder if on the logic for the question, if it's based on the graduation date, not the 36 months. Because I have literally seen them go through where the high school graduation date was a long time ago, and it did not lock up. When they do that, it's very rare that it happens, but it makes me wonder if it's actually tied to the graduation date for high school, not the 36 months. Maybe. I don't know.
Well, then it shouldn't surprise me it's 36 months, because the question is not are they a U.S. citizen or not, and that's really where the 36 months is going to hit them. So I'm confused about the answer it's getting anyway.
Right, and it may be that the answer that it's giving them really isn't answering the true reason why their application is being stopped.
Right.
So we probably need to see what's holding that up, and then either change that answer or figure out what needs to be fixed on that.
Well, the error message says that their answers indicate that they did not live in the U.S. for 36 months leading up to the high school graduation
in Texas.
In Texas, and that's the way the rule is written. So I think the question is correct in there.
It just it says in that one. It says you said you graduated from a non-Texas high school, so you can't go the 36 1-year pathway. Now that word, McAllen, and that one, that's a little bit different issue, but it does account for those students. I mean, there's a couple complexities there, but it's the pathway, 1 year, 36 months, Texas high school, Texas GED. No matter what the immigration status, no matter if you're out of state, in state, whatever, that's how you answer the question. So that one that you sent is correct. That's flagging. That student said, I graduated from a non-Texas high school, so I can't go the 36-month route. It's saying that's what it's basically telling the student.
Yeah, but in that instance, it's like yes, they didn't graduate from a Texas high school, but they didn't permanently leave the state.
Yeah, well, they would qualify for a different pathway.
But that's right.
Yeah.
But the system as it's going right now is stopping it. I mean, it's not even letting them proceed.
Well, because they answered the questions wrong. That's why it's doing it. The logic was kind of built in to flag it, but it may not explain. Okay, what are the next steps?
Right.
They would have to go and kind of redo the residency question, start over.
Yeah, it's basically asking them. I mean, the way it's set up right now, it looks like they have to change one of those answers in order to proceed. So, and it probably because the next step in the logic of where you go from here within the residency determination is based on partly on those two answers, and those would send you in different directions. So one is not stopping it, but then the follow-up is then what? Where do we send them? How do we determine what the next step is in the determination and the dynamicness of what questions get asked based on those two answers, which would go in different directions. So it sounds kind of like you want them treated as if they were in a Texas high school, or if still ask them about the residency as if they were at this point not thrown out of the possible in-state residency. But we can look at that. Thanks for sending that, Jose.
It probably needs to roll them back to the previous question where they started down that pathway and ask them, give them a prompt there.
Yeah. Because it says you selected a non-Texas high school on a previous page.
Yeah.
But said you lived in Texas for 36 months.
Prior to high school graduation.
Right,
Prior
prior to graduation.
So it probably needs to give them a prompt there and click OK and then roll them back to the previous question.
It just doesn't say what do you do next. That's why they're saying it stops there.
Yeah.
Well, and Daryle,
Rolling them back to the question is not going to solve the problem because the answer is still the same.
Right. The answers are right. It's just that it doesn't know. Yeah.
Well, but instead of sending them down that pathway to the 36-month option,
right.
it needs to
maybe
send them to the other pathway for, well, where did you reside for the 12 months prior to this term?
Right.
That's right.
So you're right. It needs to go back in a way. Although that previous question was correct, but needs to then it sent them in the wrong path from that question. Now, how to know at that point what the answer to the next question is going to be before you get there is an issue.
Well, the next
we can deal with that. Yeah.
The next way that we would try to solve that at the institution is, well, you're not eligible for it through that pathway. Where did you live for the 12 months prior to the term starting? So, it doesn't matter then if where you graduated from or did you reside in Texas for the preceding 12 months? Then that's probably where we need to roll them back to and let them try that pathway until they run into, the answer may be no. Then they would follow. Yes.
Sorry, that's how it was on the paper app years ago, where they had an opportunity to explain, and we just haven't made allowances for that over time.
Well, really, in this case, there is no explanation.
No.
Because it doesn't matter. If you graduated from an out-of-state institution or a high school, you're not even, there's nothing to explain. You just need to go back and then, well, did you live here for the previous 12 months? No. Well, then you're not eligible on that route either. So then it rolls you. I mean, right now, that's the only logical way to go on the application.
It'll be interesting what you come back with.
Yeah, I'd like to see the flow of all that. I mean, I'm not an expert in the residency determination part, but if you ask a question before and gave it an answer that took you to this page, why did it take you to this page, and ask you a question that you can only answer one way in order to continue going forward?
That's part of probably the usability. How do you navigate around? And this is who you are. Then where we're going to send you. So
at the very least, it should have marked them non-resident. I mean, let's just kind of look at it that way. It should have still allowed it to go forward. It shouldn't have put them in this loop. And that's basically what they're stuck in. They're stuck in a loop. So.
All right, I'm good.
Thank you, Jeremy. So Tim, if you'll take a look at that, we'll propose that on the next meeting for an action item if we need to change that process.
Sure.
And I invite the committee to look at that also from the perspective. Thank you, Jose, for sending that information out. So look at that situation and try some various combinations as you look through the app and see if we need to maybe we need to write that out in a flow chart or however we need to put that together for our continued success with ApplyTexas and residency requirements. Any other comments on that? The next item for consideration is concentration codes brought to us by Texas A&M University. Share mine with you.
This was brought up by our faculty. So I don't know. I think there's a handout. Does everybody have the handout? I don't know that this would apply to everyone, but I see that there are several institutions who have an interest in this as well. I think right now we only go to college and major, and we don't have the ability to select or provide concentrations. So we have colleges and programs and majors that have concentrations, and this has created quite an issue for us downstream.
Before we comment on that, the last item, major selection, section of the application was something that I suggested for the agenda, which is similar in conversation, but actually precedes this comment. And so, if you don't mind, I'd like to take them in that reverse order.
Hit it.
This is just a conversation item or an item for discussion from the advisory board that I wanted to bring forward. The major selection section of the application, as Cheryl indicated, is right now it's institutional preference, but what a majority of us are doing is drop down college, drop down major. In terms of how a student makes a selection. And the comment that I was receiving from my institution and feedback that I was receiving from folks, particularly in our orientation process, was a lot of the major changes that were taking place at orientation were driven because of what was considered a confusion in that process of drop-down college, drop-down major. For the sense that students didn't know necessarily what college a major was associated with. And so that they may make a choice of college incorrectly and then make a choice of major just to end the misery of the process. And so that's something that I wanted just to interject or entertain with the committee about. Is there a way that we need to look at that? Does that need to be proposed or perhaps prescribed in a different manner, a more interactive manner? I'm not really looking for making this a whole new module into itself, but is there a better way to approach this process? Now, that will feed into the conversation item about the concentration codes, which could conceivably, in this scenario, be a third drop-down field based upon major. So it would be college major concentration, if I'm understanding this proposal correctly.
We weren't exactly sure how it could be done. I think we've got some ideas written down here, but I don't know what. Did we talk about this the other day? A little bit?
A little bit.
But we knew it had to come here because it doesn't affect everyone. But
Ethan, I have a question. So, could the first issue that you explained,
yes, sir,
not be solved by merely listing the majors on the front end, but the mapping on the back end would map to the particular area?
I think so.
Just like the major with the college attached after the majors list, so just the minors in the one list.
Exactly.
And then we'll have two lists, one with the major and the lab concentration.
Well, and I agree, Cheryl, and Jeff, even what you're suggesting just takes the college out of the equation. And
right.
that's something that we determine ourselves, and is not necessarily something that a student needs to determine.
Really, what's the value of the student seeing the college in this process? I've always, thought they're really interested in accounting. They don't particularly know or maybe care what the name of the college might be.
Exactly.
Some of our colleges like to brand themselves as, I mean, that's just reality of the situation.
There must have, I don't know the history behind this. There must, obviously, that was deliberately done that way.
I think the current structure so the institutions could choose if you want to list college then major or just want to go straight to majors, then the current setup allows you to do either of those.
So maybe what we're saying is there's importance that they see the college there, but not necessarily that they be the ones to choose the college, right?
Right, and that was Cheryl's suggestion.
I like that idea better.
Most high school students that I know, major they want to go in.
Exactly.
I mean, there are some.
That's exactly who I was thinking.
However, I think that that's a double-edged sword because a lot of times when they see that, when they see a business school, if they said, I just want to be a business manager, but it's a so they need to think of a different route.
Agribusiness.
Right. So I mean that's why I said maybe it's a good idea to just tag the college onto the end of the major. Because it does. I mean, parents and students, they know the universities. I only use that because I'm associated with them, so that's it. I'm sure everybody has this.
Could that not be just a component to the setup? So, like, if you list, I'll use an example: chemical engineering, parentheses, Cullen College of Engineering.
Sure, I think that.
Right.
In the setup, you could do it that way, so the student sees, but the backend still has the mapping specific to whatever your code is for mapping it into the exact program plan, whatever you may have, to identify that in the in your SISs there.
I just think that the application is long enough. I was thinking if you just combine
Yeah.
then that'd be one less question if you're going to add on or maybe staff concentrations in a concentration.
In terms of the universality of the application, I really appreciate and think that it's really a setup question that we could take care of on the front end and not be an issue. Part of the conversation that my institution had was really started to talk about items that you talked about, Cheryl, and that was, for lack of a better word, clusters of majors for the similar approaches to professionalism. Agribusiness for a route to a business degree, for example. And I think that maybe falls into consideration some institutions that may have restricted majors access. But that's a much broader conversation and a developmental conversation, a very good conversation to have, but I think that we probably would lose students quickly in this process if we started down that road, because it would be a very convoluted logic to put together, perhaps. So I think that my question's been addressed. And
so I actually have another section to address for Cheryl's, because I'll give you an example. At our institution, we have kinesiology, which has 3 concentrations. So it's in our College of Liberal Arts Social Sciences, then we'll have kines, and then it'll be like exercise science, sports administration. Each of those we list separately as a major. So we'll list exercise science, again in the setup, kinesiology dash exercise science. It maps over to KINES, whatever the case may be. So I'm just fearful that if we give them one more option, they may not know that what they're looking for. If they have to then go down to another concentration per se, and I know if the suggestion is to move toward that, I would like to at least still see that there's an option for institutions could use the setup as it currently is, if we don't feel the need to have to move it to that concentration end.
Well, that's why I brought it up here, because I'm sure this only applies to, it doesn't apply to every school, and it probably doesn't apply to the community colleges. I don't know that for a fact, but that's why we certainly need to bring it up here. I would tend to say that's a difficult thing to try to work out, Tim.
It's not trivial adding. It would be, it could be done, but it would not be trivial to add that to the database and all the programs that would need to access it and the EDI and everything.
Where do we go from here, Mr. Chair?
It's a great question. This will be an item that we'll vote on as an advisory board if we want to make this change to the way that we currently offer this selection. The piece that I spoke about earlier, I think, is not a change necessarily to the structure, but this would be in addition to the database and consideration. And so,
I would suggest that some research be done on, how big a deal is this to how many people? Could it be done another way? Jeff mentions a way that it can be handled depending on how many concentrations you're talking about, and what are the options, and then y'all can decide if you want to move forward on it as a priority for the team.
So for the example that you have, and we can let Tim review that and research that possibility. If anybody has any other questions or proposals in that matter, if you would get those to Tim so that he can respond to that for our next meeting, and we can bring that up as an item at the next board meeting.
Tim, can we add graduate school in that, the graduate app? Because our institution, College of Education especially, has a lot of concentrations that they want us to look into, Maddie. Okay, thanks.
I ditto both of those.
I think it's probably more common, and on the graduate, it's pretty common on the graduate side and the graduate level. I think once it got, the work that it would add it to the database and the infrastructure could be used on whatever apps we wanted it.
Tim, can I ask a question since we're on the concentration? So I've been here for 3 years, and when I came on board, I was handed the keys to ApplyTexas and said, you own it. No one on campus knows anything about it. So everything I've learned has pretty much been through hard knocks. But from the concentration standpoint, if you go into the majors, there is a concentration area, but it has never worked for our purposes. So what exactly was that meant for?
You know, that precedes me, and so I don't know.
I just thought maybe
I don't know. I don't know.
it.
Maybe there was previous discussion. I don't know who's the most veteran member of members of the committee, but I've seen reference to concentrations within some of the infrastructure as well, and been told that wasn't built out, but that it must have been somewhere along the line. It was discussed
way back in the building.
Uh-huh.
You know, building of the whole thing. It was just never defined, so we've never.
Which I think is why
proceeded.
one of the reasons why my institution just said we'll just create a major with each of the concentrations. So kinesiology, exercise science, kines, sports administration. So the student sees it, and then it just maps to the specific mapping on that end.
And those are real majors at your institution.
Yeah.
I've also, depending on how many there are, and we of course never want to use the word hack, but there are ways that you could have something listed that would divide a major into a couple on the app, and then it would be passed in the EDI, and then you on the EDI side would know that this particular code or whatever corresponded to your concentration. That's a workaround for someone who just needs it for a little bit. It's not an answer for overall use. We can erase the word hack from the record. That's a workaround, at least in the meantime, for people who might only need it in one or two cases. It doesn't answer the question, really.
But will you be able to look at that
Yes.
down in so we can?
Yes.
That's exciting.
Are there any other items for consideration to bring before the board? One item, which I think we've already discussed, is consideration of software cleaning solution. And I think Tim was going to check with the University of Texas about our partnering with them on that process. And so I'd like to have that for the next board meeting for consideration.
Ethan, there are two things that are actually very similar to the. It's almost the same item, kind of.
Yes, sir.
One, since this is our only meeting in the fall, typically, if setting the next meeting is one.
Yes.
But the second part is our last meeting of the fall is usually where we set the priorities for the next year. And we have such a late start going because his team needs time to come back to us and say, here's how much time, so that we can, prepare for that. We've either got to figure out a way to do it, or we've got to squeeze another meeting in.
Well, and I'm glad you mentioned that, because I was going to actually suggest, because we've usually in the past met by now in September, and then we usually have an October and November meeting. But I would suggest that we meet between now and December, just because I do feel like if we don't, that December meeting will be very long, not just choosing where to put the hours for the bank that we have of hours to work, but we will still be creating and identifying problems that we need to get fixed. And this also may be time for the subcommittees to have an opportunity to meet more purposeful than before the December meeting.
I'm just afraid we're about to put ourselves in a bind where we're having to throw things together quickly in order to fill out the time for next year. And I don't want to do that.
We don't have much time in November either. TACRO is first week, and then we're out for third week or whenever that area is. So we're going to have to move fast to get something in.
I think it all depends on the agenda items. I mean, if I'm not seeing that many big items, that we do need another meeting. A lot of the discussions are going to be Tim doing a little bit of research and getting time. Unless, again, it all depends if we have enough for another agenda. If we have enough agenda items, I just don't see it.
Well, at very least, between now and Christmas, we've got to at least meet in order to decide what we're going to put his team to doing over the next year.
The December, I think that the idea is for this committee to meet 3 times a year, and not 4 times. So, I mean, that's going to be where we're trying to head, of getting all the agenda items and everything else, meeting in October, and getting a lot of feedback on the first meeting so that we can have a really good discussion. But I'm not seeing that many agenda items if you want to meet next month.
Jose, we also have not had TACRO, and I do think we will have a large number of issues that pop up at TACRO. We had it last year. We've had it for the past couple of years, as far as suggestions and comments and thoughts that our member institutions who aren't a member of the committee want addressed. So I have a feeling if we wait until December to have a discussion about that, we will be very rushed to try to go through that meeting, as well as we have to commit to the hours that we have available for development at that time. And to try to do both of those in one meeting is going to be challenging.
Well, what if we split the difference? I mean, what if we decide that we do need another meeting, rather than having another date of travel, we do a 2-day meeting? We come in and do 1 day and then turn around and do the next. If I'm just being theoretical here, rather than trying to bring us in twice, which for travel is more difficult in our short period of time, we just extend the meeting time.
In December? I think that's a good idea, because in between now and that December meeting, the subcommittees can be working by email and phone and everything else to try to get that. But we cannot do a 9-to-1 meeting in December and cover all this.
No, yeah.
We cannot do that. There's too much activity here. I like the 2-day.
I would actually be pro to that. Let's set a date that we could possibly block off 2 days. But if we only need 1, we just use 1. But if we need 2, then we use both. I'm trying to think ahead so that we can utilize our time better.
A couple years ago, we did that. We did like a late afternoon, not late afternoon, but like a 1 o'clock start time on day 1, and then carried over to day 2. Yeah.
A full day, but right. A half day leading up to it.
And the only caveat I have to that is, if the first one is intended to be like this one, which discusses different new agenda items and stuff, and then I need to go back to the technical team before the second one so that I can give you a really good idea of how to help prioritize based on how many hours. That could work on a 1 to 2 day, but it would be better for me to have early the first day and late the second, so there's more time in between, because then I could have a couple meetings with my team, then come back on the late day or the second day, or else 2 mornings, so that I'd have an afternoon with my team to say, okay, here's what they discussed today that might be new agenda items. How do we map that out in terms of work?
I mean, I think all these are very relevant, but if we're going to have subcommittees, and we really are going to have them, and we're going to expect some kind of result out of them, how can we meet between, if we don't meet again altogether, how are we going to come up with things that are really relevant to the subcommittees to present then in December? I mean, I think it's tough to say that we would just meet one more time, because we haven't developed anything in the subcommittees. Most of them are changed now, so no one hardly met before this, Going
to be a lot of emails and phone calls, but
a lot of the committees, like before I joined the scholarship committee, was actually doing a lot of conference calls.
That's the other.
So I mean, that you don't have to meet in person. And at the time, the subcommittee was made up of non-members, so they weren't even members of the committee. So I mean, again, you could be doing a lot of that background information and background work without actually coming in and meeting. So yeah.
Or conference calls, but also if we're expected for the committees to get together before the meeting, we have to figure out the logistics of that if we have a split 2-day.
Well, especially for members that are in multiple committee meeting, multiple committees or subcommittees. So I mean, that's logistics that y'all have to work on. That I don't think that that it's feasible to like come in and expect to meet right before the meeting, because at that point there's not that much time to actually come up with any workaround. I know that we've met a couple of times before the meeting, and yeah, it's a good conversation, but it's not enough time to actually do something and have like a plan in place. And it just becomes an oral report that this is what we discussed and this is what we're going to be doing. But as a subcommittee, you do have to put the time outside the committee. Yeah.
Let me see if I can kind of recapture this procedurally, what we're considering here. This is our opening meeting of this year's advisory board. This is an introduction of items, agenda items, which we have submitted prior to this first meeting. This is the first time that we've seen these items. Some of these items we're not voting on. In fact, we voted on very few items other than to approval of our minutes. And so as this was both introductory, it was also informative of our process to consider for this coming year. In response to what Jeff had to say, that yes, indeed, this is historically we have set the agenda for the application change in December to talk about what items we want to take and carry forward, and usually that information is then is preceded by Tim, your folks' assessment of the time and resource commitment for each of the items. Between now and when we meet again, if our next proposed meeting is in December, then we would have to have completed all of those items that we have talked about today, all the items that the subcommittees need to review, and we would have to build an agenda previously or prior to that meeting for consent. And so I agree that it would be very difficult to do that in one meeting. We could do it in a two-tier staged meeting. Perhaps for the first day we set the agenda item, and then it gives Tim an opportunity to poll his resources and his staff to see what that would look like, and then approve that item on the second day. Is that? Am I hearing that is perhaps what the board is recommending? Is that perhaps a good compromise for the coordinating board if we do a 2-day meeting in December instead of any other additional meetings this fall?
That's fine.
This is going to, I'm sorry.
I was going to say, I'm just afraid that it's going to be very difficult with all of us starting registration to cram another meeting in between now and then. And it's because we started so late. If we had done a September meeting, then we could have put one in October, which would have given us more lead time up to that. But because of the changes in the committee and all that, that made it difficult. So the only other way I can foresee getting a good quorum here in order to be able to do it is to kind of merge our last meeting together, make it longer. And I'll be quite honest, I'm not one that likes coming to Austin. So I like the idea of reducing our number of times to come, but at the same time, I mean, it's something we've got to do.
Is there any other conversation on the proposed meeting of 2 days in December?
Is there this is only my second time through in my role. Is there some commitment to getting that vote done before the first of the year as to, because I know there's a follow-up meeting already, that, or at least in the past, there's been, late January, early February, I guess, for...
Sometime in the spring, yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I didn't know, in terms of, was that set up because technical teams needs?
Yeah, I mean the goal is that, just to back end, the idea is that I'm probably going to butcher the dates here, but we want to make sure that the application is available for institutions to turn on as early as possible. In this case, it's usually August 1st. Sometimes it's I'm not sure A&M if you guys turned it on before August 1st this fall. So with that, though, we've got to make sure that by 1st of July, institutions have done the sign-off on testing, and then so that usually occurs like May, June. We also have our users group in June, July, whenever that is, June. But then the bulk of that really is the time to make sure that the technical team has complete and adequate use of hours to be able to meet those expectations for our member institutions, to be able to do their testing so that we can move to turn on. So December is when we basically have given our bucket of hours we can use, and then we determine, working with the technical team, the wish list is 2,400 hours. We only have 800 hours to work, and so we just have to pick and choose at that point. And as a group, we decide what are the most relevant issues that impact all of our institutions, and then that's where we go. And so it gives the technical team an agenda to work with between January, February, March, April, and then institutions can start testing at that point.
I guess I'm wondering, I don't know from our end, from the way I'm looking at it, I don't know that having that meeting in January would cost us much.
As opposed to December.
As opposed to December. I mean, having one of each, but not, instead of putting two together. If I'm just saying from the technical side, I think if it would make this process go better to have that final vote in January instead of in December, I don't think that would affect our ability to deliver on time. I don't know if that solves your problem, but
no, that's a very good point. So now, and the other consideration then is to have a December and then January meeting to finalize the 2014-2015 application development. So you have two options to consider.
And maybe, not January 31st, but, mid-January, after everybody's back from, before the students come to some of our
Actually, mid-January, oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, that's the beginning of a term for us. Yeah. We'll be unemployed if we tell our presidents that we're leaving campus during that time, or at least I will be.
Okay, so I'm going to poll the committee, the advisory board on two items, either a 2-day in December or a split December-January. So show of hands for the first. Yes. And then for the one in December, one in January.
For those of you who didn't vote, what do you want?
I don't like either option because I'm in missions and registrar. So I've got commencement in December and I've got registration in January. So
Yes.
Yeah.
So there's no good time for you, Daryle?
No time.
Okay. Okay, so the majority thinks
I
that...
throw myself upon the mercy of the committee.
The majority of the board says 2 days in December. Does anybody have any recommended times? Do we need to poll people? A doodle poll?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, we'll move forward with that then and set the time for that next meeting. And the agenda will be both a regular meeting and also a committee meetings. Okay? To set the agenda.
And I think, speaking from our needs, then my concern is that we won't have time to digest any new items that come up in that first meeting in order to give you a good sense of what it will take to do them by the next day. So we either need to make sure there's as much time as possible between the meetings and as much as possible that we can get some heads up on what the things are so that I don't hear about them for the first time, which usually we're not. I mean, Jose sends out draft agendas, and maybe we can just kind of know what's going to be proposed as soon as it is in the air.
I think that's incumbent upon the subcommittees to have a good collaboration. So if we all as professionals swear to do that, and we'll get that information to Jose and keep you in the loop, and that's where we make up that time, because it's to our benefit if you have as much time as possible.
Right.
So.
If I can come already knowing a little bit about what something might be before you all discuss it, will help me.
Are there any other new items for consideration by the board that were not on the agenda? Yes. Coordinating board did send something out already, but
Yes, and we've updated the website too. So the membership roster is on the website.
I've sent my card around so that you can communicate with me about your committees, and if you are volunteering for a committee and you didn't do so today, or if you would like to draft somebody to your committee, conscript somebody to your committee, especially there's some names over there on the back table that didn't make it today. And so
you can brag about that PhD.
Thank you very much.
Congratulations.
Thank you. If there are no other new items, then I would check with the coordinating board if there's any other items that you guys have. Very good. Then I think we can stand adjourned at this point with a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. We adjourn. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you very much.